After waiting for a long time, he finally appeared, but he was holding a girl's hand. Sophia Smith turned pale. She recognized the girl, a junior from the dance society at school. William Parker acted intimately with her, and despite seeing the uncomfortable expressions on his parents' faces, he merely smirked casually. "Dad, Mom, Grandma, this is my new girlfriend," he announced. Mr. Parker immediately became furious, slamming his hand on the table and pointing at his son. "William Parker, you're completely out of line. You still have an engagement with Sophie. How dare you get a girlfriend and even bring her to the Parker home?" Sophia thought bitterly to herself that William dared to do far more than that. Over the years, everyone in their social circle knew he pursued women relentlessly, never taking her seriously. Sure enough, William glanced at Sophia indifferently before raising his eyebrows with a smile. "Please clarify your statement, would you? It's our family that has an engagement with her, not me personally. Since you insist on this arranged marriage, don't I have a brother? If you're in such a rush, I can call him to come back from abroad and marry Sophia right now. How about that?" No one had expected William to be so direct. Mr. Parker clutched his chest, overwhelmed with anger. "You ungrateful boy, Mr. Parker," and Sophia quickly moved to support him, and even Grandma Elizabeth looked displeased as she gazed at her favorite grandson. "Look what you've done to your father," she scolded. Sophia quickly tried to calm Mr. Parker. "Uncle Victor, please don't be upset." William shrugged indifferently. What he found most irritating was how Sophia seemed determined to marry him no matter what. Everyone in Northridge knew the Parker family had two sons. But since the eldest, Ethan Parker, had always been too cold and distant from women, and was several years older than her, the engagement had become William's responsibility in everyone's eyes. He continued, "You all know my brother would never like her, so you pushed me forward instead, but I don't like her either. Don't make me the scapegoat." Sophia felt as though she'd been slapped. Though she was the daughter of the prominent Smith family, he was tossing her around like garbage. Mrs. Parker's expression changed, and she quickly took Sophia's hand. "Sophie, don't take it to heart." Sophia forced herself to maintain her composure and managed a smile. Then she looked at William again. "It's a family dinner today, and everyone's been waiting for you. Let's eat first." She was just trying to ease the tension, but to William, it seemed artificial and insincere. After all this drama, what was the point of sitting down to eat? He took his new girlfriend's hand and laughed coldly. "No need. It seems I'm not welcome at this family dinner anyway. I've lost my appetite." With that, he led the girl away. He deliberately asked within Sophia's earshot, "Sweetheart, what would you like to eat?" The young girl, swept up in the romance of him defying his family for her, answered coquettishly, "Let's have French cuisine." "Whatever you say," he replied. The couple left the mansion within moments, leaving the Parker family fuming. Sophia watched his retreating figure, her heart aching terribly. "Sophie, he's just immature. He enjoys playing around right now. It'll get better later," Grandma Elizabeth sighed as she tried to comfort her. Sophia nodded. "I understand, Grandma." But inside, she felt an endless wave of melancholy. In truth, she knew better than anyone that William's treatment of her had never been because he was playful. It was because he hated her. Hated her for indirectly driving away the girl he loved most. The Smith and Parker families were old friends, and Sophia had grown up with William and Ethan. She had always known she was meant to marry into the Parker family someday. However, Ethan had been too cold, showing a distant and aloof attitude to everyone. Sophia was a bit afraid of him. William, on the other hand, was not only closer to her age, but had always quietly looked after her. Yes, before he came to hate her, William had actually been very kind to Sophia. He would place flat shoes and her favorite lemon soda outside the dance room when she practiced. He would secretly complete her error correction workbooks late at night, carefully writing out each step. When her parents wouldn't allow her to eat snacks, he would secretly have the servants bring her favorite treats. The instances were countless, one after another. When she was 8 years old, William had even saved her life. Sophia was afraid of water, yet once when passing the lake outside the mansion, she accidentally dropped her favorite bracelet into it. She tried to retrieve it but fell into the water herself. She thrashed about for a long time but kept sinking faster. Just before losing consciousness, William plunged into the water and rescued her. Afterward, William had even jokingly asked, if she wanted to be his wife. She wasn't sure if it was a joke or sincere then, but she couldn't control her heart and fell in love with William. Their relationship had actually been very harmonious. When did it change? Probably after Grace appeared. In their sophomore year of high school, the Parker family sponsored Grace Miller, who had lost both parents. She was like a Cinderella from a TV drama with a pitiful background and a stubborn, resilient personality. William's attention was repeatedly drawn to her. He fought for her, skipped classes for her, and eventually fell hopelessly in love with her. At their high school graduation, on Sophia's 18th birthday, there was a grand birthday party, but she couldn't find William. She went out to look for him. That's when she saw William and Grace locked in a tight embrace in a corner. At that moment, she knew her love had died. She was heartbroken for a long time, but eventually decided to let go. So Sophia approached her parents, proposing to dissolve the engagement between the two families. At that time, she hadn't realized that in families like theirs, some things couldn't simply be discarded at will. As long as the intertwined relationship between the Smith and Parker families remained, the engagement could never be broken. Moreover, because she wanted to end the engagement, the Parker family became aware of the relationship between Grace and William, and in anger, they sent Grace abroad. Sophia had indirectly forced Grace away, and William came to hate her completely. Thinking of the past, she sighed silently. The family dinner ended in disarray. The next day, Sophia returned to school. As soon as she walked in, she saw a helicopter flying back and forth in the distance. Countless roses with morning dew fell from the sky, creating a romantic and stunning scene. William sat in the helicopter, and standing where the rose petals were falling was the new girlfriend he had brought home yesterday. The entire school was drawn outside to watch, exclamations of amazement rising and falling. William's girlfriend's face showed both shyness and excitement. His grand gesture seemed excessive to some, but it still captured the hearts of many girls. Even though everyone at school knew that William Parker's girlfriends typically had a shelf life of only 3 days, yet girls still lined up to date him. Dating someone like William Parker is worth it, even if it only lasts 3 days. Yes, no wonder he never lacks girlfriends. I wonder who will finally win him over. I'd love to see such a playboy settle down. As the students' discussions reached her ears, Sophia gazed absent-mindedly at the rain of roses. A playboy's love was like fireworks. Though brief, it was dazzling, but she didn't envy these girls. Sophia understood better than anyone that the person he truly loved wasn't here. After the roses were completely scattered, the helicopter roared away. Sophia lowered her eyes and silently returned to the classroom. And the next day, the girlfriend who had been showered with such grand affection just a day before was promptly dumped. The girl was caught off guard by the heartbreak, but William had already casually moved on. Soon after, a new girl appeared by his side. It seemed like he was deliberately showing off to Sophia, making each relationship a dramatic spectacle. All these girls had one thing in common: each resembled Grace Miller in some way. On the weekend, Sophia received a call from the Parker family, inviting her over. Having 2 sons, Mrs. Parker had always wanted a daughter, and Sophia had always been obedient and well-behaved, extremely liked by the Parker family. Over the years, Sophia would occasionally visit the Parker family to keep them company. At the Parker mansion, "Sophie's here, come try the pastries I just made," Mrs. Parker called out warmly. Sophia tasted one and smiled. "Your skills are getting better and better, Aunt Victoria. These are even better than those from pastry shops." Mrs. Parker was delighted by her compliment. "Sophie, you've become such a smooth talker. Come, have some more if you like them." After making pastries with Mrs. Parker, Sophia played chess with Mr. Parker. Out of 3 games, Sophia barely won one, which made her almost jump with joy. "Uncle Victor, has my chess improved?" she asked excitedly. The usually strict Mr. Parker smiled at her. "Yes, quite a bit." After chess, she happily went to the garden to help the elderly Mrs. Parker water the flowers. Last night's rain had scattered many petals on the ground, which distressed the old lady greatly. Sophia picked up a fallen rose and tucked it behind the white hair at the old woman's temple. "Grandma, a white head adorned with flowers dispels worries. Don't be upset," she said. The old lady was amused by her and soon was all smiles. When William returned, he happened to witness this scene. He was most annoyed by the fact that the whole family adored Sophia. William gave Sophia a cold glance. Such an act. The smile on Sophia's face instantly froze. The old lady immediately frowned at him. "You rascal, what are you saying? Where have you been these past few days? Now that you're back, spend some time with Sophie." William wouldn't listen. He didn't stop for a moment. "Grandma, since you like her so much, let her keep you company." With that, he left Sophia behind and entered the mansion. The old lady was quite upset. Seeing Sophia's dim expression, she quickly took her hand. "My dear, he will come to appreciate you eventually." Sophia tugged at the corner of her mouth. "I know, Grandma. Let me continue helping you water the flowers." But bringing them together had always been the Parker family's most urgent matter. Shortly after, Grandma Elizabeth had a servant bring a plate of cherries. "Sophie, William loves these. Take them to him." Sophia knew the grandmother was creating an opportunity for her. After some hesitation, she accepted the plate. She went upstairs, first knocking on William's door. There was no response from inside. "William, are you there?" After knocking a few more times, the slightly ajar door opened by itself. Sophia walked in to find no one there. She placed the fruit plate on the table and lowered her gaze, only to see a photo frame on the table. The person in the photo was Grace. Sophia froze, then realized that this table had many of Grace's belongings. Her high school ID, her used hairpin, the pictures she had drawn herself. It felt like something sharp pierced her heart. So in the years since Grace had left, William had been thinking of her through these items every day. Sophia picked up the photo, suddenly remembering that her own things had once been here too. When she was young, Sophia had made an ugly handcrafted bear for him. William had laughed until he was bent over, but still placed her gift in the most prominent position, threatening anyone who touched it. "Young lady, how dare I not treasure something you've given me?" he had said. At the time, those words had made Sophia's heart leap with joy. But now, that little bear had long been thrown away somewhere. As she was lost in thought, William suddenly walked in. Seeing her holding his things, his face darkened, and he rushed over to snatch back the photo. "What are you trying to do? After driving her away, now you won't even leave her photo alone?" he said. That icy gaze deeply wounded Sophia, making her heart ache. She hid the pain in her eyes and said softly, I didn't mean to. Grandma asked me to bring you some fruit." William saw the cherries on the table, but his anger grew instead of subsiding. He swept the porcelain plate of fruit onto the floor with force, and the flying fragments cut Sophia's arm. "Sophia Smith, how can you be so shameless? I've said I don't like you, yet you still keep clinging to me. Are you incapable of understanding human speech?" After another outburst, he stormed off angrily, taking the photo with him. Sophia stood frozen, her eyes red. Her entire body felt as cold as if it had been filled with ice and snow. She seemed unaware of the blood flowing from the arm that had been cut by the fragments. Their relationship was bitterly hostile, and William didn't even want to see her face. As for Sophia, she could only watch helplessly as he continued to be sweet with various girls every day. Until one day, while Sophia was studying in the self-study room, she suddenly received a phone call. William had been in a car accident. He had always been wild, and racing with others was common. This time, somehow, the brakes failed, and an accident occurred. When Sophia heard the news, she immediately went to the hospital. Seeing the person unconscious in the hospital bed, she found it difficult to breathe. "When will he wake up?" she asked. The doctor shook his head helplessly. "The patient's injuries are quite severe. We need to observe further." Hearing this, she fought back her feelings of despair and crouched by the bed, tightly holding William's hand. She had loved William for too many years. Gaining his affection was difficult, but for her, letting go was equally challenging. "William, please wake up soon." In the quiet hospital room, the girl's voice was filled with sobs. Sophia kept a sleepless vigil over him. Even when his parents urged her to go home and rest, she refused. 3 days later, William finally woke up. The first thing he saw was Sophia's haggard face and bloodshot eyes. "You're awake," she exclaimed. "Are you hungry? I'll get you some food." "No, I should call the doctor first. Is your leg still uncomfortable?" William looked at her pale yet joyful expression and was momentarily taken aback. A strange current passed through his heart. How long had she gone without sleep to look so exhausted? Had she been by his side all this time? But immediately, he suppressed that unusual feeling. As before, his cold face was full of mockery. "Are you so quick to step into the role of my wife? Too bad, even if I were to become disabled, I would never marry you." Now that William was awake, he was no longer going to quietly accept her care as he had while lying unconscious in the hospital bed. His attitude was like a bucket of cold water poured over her. After anxiously persevering through 3 days, she hadn't expected his first words upon waking to be a mockery of her. The joy on Sophia's face suddenly froze. "Why must you think of me this way?" William coldly said. "You played tricks to drive Grace away back then, all so you could marry me." Over the years, Sophia had explained herself many times. "I really didn't intentionally drive her away. What will it take for you to believe me?" she pleaded. William's tone was icy. "Then dissolve our engagement and show me." If it were possible, Sophia would have succeeded 3 years ago, but who could blame her for being a Smith? As long as the intertwined interests between the Smith and Parker families exist, our engagement cannot be canceled. Back then, I merely mentioned it, and your parents sent Grace out of the country. Don't you understand by now? In fact, Sophia also knew that William, being so intelligent, surely understood. He just refused to yield. But Sophia had persisted alone for so many years, and she was truly exhausted. Looking at the man before her, she gathered her courage and spoke. "Grace is gone. Can't you try to like me a little? When we were children, your feelings toward me weren't," she was about to say, "indifferent." But the last few words were cut off by William's frosty gaze. "Sophia Smith, I would rather die than like you. Don't you think you're fake? You claim to like me, yet pretend to support me and Grace. You drove her away, yet act more innocent than anyone. If you really want to cancel the engagement, then find a way." Each of his words was like a sword, piercing deeply into Sophia's heart. Sophia was so angered by him that her eyes turned red, but she knew that even if she cried in front of him, she would only earn a comment about being theatrical. She held back her tears and quickly turned to run out of the hospital room. She ran all the way outside the hospital. The sky had begun to rain without her noticing, and soon she was soaked through. But Sophia seemed not to feel the cold, her face indistinguishable between rainwater and tears. The sky gradually darkened, and she didn't know where to go. In the darkness, car headlights suddenly shone on her face. Sophia quickly used her arm to shield her eyes, watching as a Maybach stopped beside her. A man stepped out from the back seat, holding a black umbrella, tall and elegant, with a cold demeanor. Looking up, Sophia spoke hoarsely. "Ethan?" Ethan Parker frowned as he looked at her soaked form. Without a word, he opened the car door and ushered her inside. The car's heater was on high. Sophia quickly wiped away her tears and secretly observed the man driving. Why had Ethan suddenly returned from abroad? The 2 Parker sons had long been assigned their roles, one to guard the domestic front, the other to expand overseas. Back then, Ethan had studied abroad, and after graduation, he had remained there, supposedly planning to stay overseas permanently. Sophia wondered but didn't dare to ask. Although she had grown up with Ethan, she had always been somewhat afraid of him. Suddenly, Sophia remembered that he had a cleanliness obsession and didn't like girls coming too close. Sophia discreetly moved a bit, shifting closer to the car window. "Sit closer," Ethan suddenly spoke. His voice was pleasant, like metal striking fine porcelain. Sophia was startled but silently moved back. Ethan didn't take her home or back to the Parker mansion, but to his temporary apartment. Sophia actually felt relieved. She didn't know how to explain her current state to the elders, but being alone with Ethan also made Sophia uncomfortable. "Towel," he said. He handed her a dry white towel, but Sophia sat in a daze for a long time without moving. Ethan simply took matters into his own hands, helping her dry her hair with a few gentle strokes. Suddenly, they were very close, with some subtle physical contact. Sophia abruptly came to her senses, her heart beginning to race. Ethan seemed to notice her discomfort. His eyes deepened imperceptibly as he withdrew his hand. "Dry it yourself," he said. He handed her the towel and turned back to his room. As Sophia stared at his retreating figure, William's words suddenly echoed in her ears. "Sophia Smith, if you're determined to fulfill the engagement, why not marry my brother instead? Why must you cling to me?" Perhaps because she had been so upset by William today, she now had different thoughts about this man she had previously never dared to look at. Indeed, marrying the older brother would be the same. Only then could she make William believe that she hadn't intentionally driven Grace away, that she had truly wanted to support him and Grace. Sophia stood rooted to the spot for a long time before slowly walking toward Ethan's room. Her heart was pounding so hard it made her tremble. Sophia stopped at the doorway and knocked while still dripping wet. Ethan was looking at his computer, probably working. When he suddenly saw Sophia standing at the door, he thought she needed something. Sophia had mischievous intentions, but realized at the last moment that she had no idea how to seduce someone. She stuttered, "Ethan, I can't dry my hair properly. Could you help me?" After saying this, she wanted to find a hole to crawl into. There couldn't be a worse excuse, but Ethan's eyes flashed with a strange emotion. He closed his computer and walked to her side. Then he actually began to help Sophia dry her hair. Sophia thought he must have agreed so readily because he saw her as a little sister. But his movements were so gentle that, for a moment, she felt dazed. However, when she secretly looked up and saw Ethan's cold, godlike face, she felt awkward again, not knowing what to do next. At this point, Ethan had finished drying her hair. He bent down to throw the towel into the trash, and a photo fell from his pocket. Sophia caught a glimpse. It was actually a girl. But before she could see clearly what the girl looked like, he quickly picked it up and put it back in his pocket. Sophia was shocked. Ethan Parker actually carried a girl's photo. She instinctively asked, "Ethan?" That Ethan turned away, his voice calm, "The person I like." Those few words were like a thunderbolt. Sophia stared at him in disbelief. Wasn't he supposed to be disinterested in women? No wonder he had suddenly returned. Could it be because, "Did you come back because the person you like is also in the country?" she asked. The man nodded again. This time Sophia was completely awake. With her thoughts in turmoil, she spoke, "Ethan, thank you for taking me in. It's late, I should go home now." Without waiting for him to respond, Sophia hurriedly turned and ran out. At the same time, she completely abandoned her earlier thoughts. Outside, the rain had stopped. She walked along the roadside, berating herself. She wasn't good at seduction to begin with, and then she had chosen someone of extreme difficulty, who also happened to have someone he liked. She had truly been driven crazy by William to have such an outrageous idea. Sophia returned home with countless sighs. Late at night, lying in bed unable to sleep, she finally got up and took a button from her drawer. An ordinary black button, it was the one she had inadvertently pulled from William's clothes when he saved her from drowning at age 8. She had treasured it all these years. Sophia stared at the button, scenes from childhood flooding her mind. Gradually, she couldn't help but think that William and Grace could never be together. The Parker family would ultimately force him to marry her. They couldn't escape this fate. Since that was the case, she could only strive to make William fall in love with her. Otherwise, how would they spend the next few decades? Moreover, back when he rescued her from the water, Sophia had vowed to marry only him. Thinking this way, Sophia was filled with renewed hope. She held the button to her heart and whispered, "Keep going." The next day, Sophia woke up early and made a pot of bone broth to take to the hospital. But when she arrived at the hospital room with the food container, she found it empty. She grabbed a passing nurse. "Nurse, where is the patient from this room?" "Him, he checked out early this morning." Hearing this, Sophia immediately became anxious. "His leg is still injured. How could he leave so soon?" The nurse seemed to recall something. "I think he said he was going to the airport to meet a friend. He was very excited and left. No one could stop him." Who could make William disregard his health to go to the airport? Sophia was stunned as a name flashed in her mind. Her hand holding the food container tightened gradually. Then she quickly turned to rush to the airport. On the way, 1,000 speculations crossed Sophia's mind. But she knew that only one person could make William lose control like this. Hurrying to the airport, just as she got out of the car, she saw a familiar figure in the distance. Grace Miller in front of everyone, William was holding her tightly, his joy at finding her again impossible to conceal. Grace's choked voice came through. "Will, I missed you so much that I secretly came back to see you. I should go now." But how could William let go? His eyes red, he said, "Don't go, Gracie. I'll never let you go again." Grace's voice was choked with emotion. "I must go. If I don't, your family won't leave me alone." "Grace, unless I die, you're not leaving me." As soon as he finished speaking, he imperiously kissed Grace. Grace struggled only briefly before putting her arms around his waist. The two kissed passionately at the airport. Sophia's hand trembled, and the food container fell to the ground with a crash. The broth she had carefully prepared all morning was ruined. She stood there watching for who knows how long, until her heart was numb with pain, before turning to leave. Some things were truly destined. Perhaps she and William Parker were forever meant to have a connection, but no future together. That evening, the Parker family learned of Grace's secret return. William was immediately brought back home by the family's bodyguards, and Mr. Parker strictly ordered him not to see Grace again. But how could he give up? "Dad, either kill me today, or as long as I have breath left, I will be with Grace." Mr. Parker was so angry he pulled a whip from the wall. "Fine, you want family punishment. I'll give it to you." Sophia only learned of his beating from her parents. She hurried to the Parker house, and from the doorway could see William kneeling in the living room, covered in blood. Mr. Parker had delivered who knows how many lashes, but he hadn't yielded at all. "William Parker, do you still know who you are?" Mr. Parker demanded. William laughed coldly. "Even if I stop being a Parker, I will be with Grace. I will never let you send her away again, and I will never fulfill that broken engagement." Grandma Elizabeth slammed her cane loudly. "What about Sophie? What about Sophie?" William looked disgusted. "The very thought of marrying her makes me sick." Then, using his last bit of strength, he stood up shakily and left. As soon as he opened the door, he saw Sophia standing not far away, her face pale. William paused but still ignored her and walked out. Sophia heard his phone ring, and William answered it. He spoke tenderly to the person on the other end. "Be good, I'll be right back to keep you company." A complete contrast to his cold demeanor moments ago. Under the night sky, Sophia stood in the courtyard of the Parker home, finding it hard even to breathe. At this time, Ethan walked out from inside and saw Sophia. He fixed his gaze on her and noticed she was trembling slightly. William was just speaking thoughtlessly. "Don't take it to heart." A strong urge to cry welled up, but Sophia could only hold it back. As the daughter of the Smith family, if she cried at this moment, she would lose all face. She smiled, but it looked worse than crying. "I understand, Ethan. I'll go home now." Ethan looked at her smile and frowned imperceptibly. "I'll take you." But Sophia just wanted to be alone. "No need, thank you." In the moonlight, Ethan could only watch her slender figure slowly leave. His eyes were as deep as ink. Grace ultimately stayed. The next day, when Sophia returned to school, she saw William and Grace holding hands openly on campus. She had also transferred to this university. Sophia turned to leave, but Grace spotted her. "Sophia," she called out. Grace, holding William's hand, walked toward her. "What a coincidence. I didn't expect we'd all be classmates again." Sophia truly didn't know how to exchange pleasantries with her in their current positions. William just gave Sophia a cold glance, his attention always focused on Grace. "Does it bother you that Will and I are together?" Grace asked. Grace looked very sincere, as if she would break up with him if Sophia said she was bothered. Sophia thought that whether she was bothered or not had never been the point. After a brief silence, she said, "There's nothing to be bothered about. I have class now, I'll go first." As for Grace, watching Sophia's retreating figure, a hint of a smile crossed her eyes. From that day on, there were no other girls around William. Every day he and Grace were inseparable, causing the entire school to marvel. The person who tamed the playboy had finally appeared. Everyone envied Grace. Sophia could only try her best to avoid encountering them at school. But not long after, she had a new problem. Another notorious playboy at school suddenly took an interest in Sophia and pursued her relentlessly every day. Monday he sent flowers, Tuesday movie tickets, Wednesday clothes, Thursday jewelry. Sophia couldn't take it anymore. After Leo Taylor once again presented her with roses in front of everyone, she finally snapped. "Leo, I'm engaged. I can't be with you." But Leo, also part of their social circle, knew her engagement was with the Parker family. Thinking of how William had recently settled down, he smiled dismissively. "With William Parker. Sophia, you should find a better excuse to reject me. He clearly doesn't care about you at all." Sophia remained cold. "But I don't like you either." With so many people watching, Leo wouldn't allow her to reject him. "Give me a chance, will you? I've already booked the restaurant. Let me take you to dinner." As he spoke, he actually tried to take her hand. The onlookers were egging him on, not finding Leo's forceful behavior inappropriate at all. Sophia tried to break free, but she wasn't strong enough. At this moment, William happened to be passing by with Grace. Leo revealed a calculated smile and directly asked William, "William Parker, I want to take Sophia out for dinner. Do you approve?" William looked over coldly, his voice indifferent. "What does it have to do with me?" He didn't even linger for a second, walking away with Grace. Leo laughed gleefully, tightening his grip on Sophia, becoming even more unrestrained. "Did you hear that? Even your fiancé doesn't care about you. Come with me." He forcibly tried to drag her away. Sophia continued to struggle. "I'm not going, let me go," but her resistance was minimal. The other students also thought she was just playing hard to get and began to disperse. Suddenly, a pair of knuckled hands firmly grabbed Leo. Both turned to look, and Leo's face changed first. "Ethan, why are you here?" No one in their circle didn't recognize the Parker brothers. Ethan was especially known for his coldness. Though not much older than them, everyone had to act deferential in his presence. Thus, Leo now felt somewhat intimidated seeing his cold gaze. Ethan's eyes narrowed as he coldly pulled Sophia behind him. "Can't you hear that she doesn't want to go with you?" Though Leo didn't understand why the usually detached Ethan Parker would get involved in such matters, he felt that pursuing someone wasn't such a big deal. "Ethan, it's not what you think. I just want to pursue her, but she's being too reserved." Hearing this, Ethan looked at Sophia. "You choose him or choose me." Sophia was startled, feeling something odd about this question. But given the current situation, she had no time to think too much. She quickly clutched Ethan's sleeve. "Ethan, I don't want to go to dinner with him." Ethan's lips curved slightly as he looked back at Leo. "You heard her. Will you leave now, or shall I have your parents come pick you up?" Leo had never imagined that for such a small matter, Ethan would bring up parents. His expression changed dramatically, and he quickly begged off and left. Seeing him leave, Ethan turned to Sophia. "How long has he been bothering you?" William didn't handle it. At his words, Sophia was startled, her eyes instantly reddening, but she just shook her head. "Not long." Thinking of William's coldness earlier, her nose ached with the effort not to cry. But she didn't want Ethan to see this vulnerable side of her. "I should go, Ethan. Thank you for today." After that day, perhaps because Ethan had said something when he went back, the Parker family pressured William even more. They directly cut off William's cards and confiscated all his cars. Overnight, he went from being a wealthy young master to having nothing. But the Parker family had underestimated William, thinking cutting off his money would make him yield. A few days later, Sophia saw photos of William and Grace eating in the cafeteria on the school forum. The young master is so down to earth for the first time, actually eating in the cafeteria. "I heard he was sanctioned by his family for dating. My God, has William Parker gone crazy? Master Will is awesome, eating cabbage for love." Students discussed excitedly, but seeing this, Sophia felt a mix of emotions. William loved Grace to such an extent. The Parker family had cut off his money for almost a month. William still showed no signs of yielding. Sophia's 21st birthday arrived, and the Smith family organized a birthday celebration for her on a cruise ship. During this month, William hadn't even returned home once, but for this birthday party, the Parker family forced him to attend, or else they would take action against Grace. So, William came, but he brought Grace with him. On the luxurious cruise ship, the Parker and Smith families watched as William ostentatiously entered with Grace on his arm, their faces changing. William, with a completely unconcerned demeanor, raised his eyebrows and smiled. "Why the long faces? Didn't you want me to come?" With so many people in the banquet hall, Mr. Parker couldn't explode in anger despite his fury. He could only speak through clenched teeth, his face turning blue. "Behave yourself tonight, throughout the evening." Although Sophia was the center of attention, wearing the most beautiful dress in the room, she never genuinely smiled once. After fulfilling her social obligations, she slipped away to the deck, seeking some quiet. She hid in a corner not easily found, but after just a few minutes, she heard a familiar voice. "So what if his family has cut off his cards? He's still the Parker's son." Sophia looked up to see Grace, who had just stepped out. She seemed to be talking to a friend on the phone, her expression light and pleased. "The Parker family has only 2 sons. In the future, half the family assets will be his." That proud, boastful demeanor was vastly different from the pitiful, helpless image she had previously portrayed. Sophia frowned and silently continued listening. I was so foolish back then. When his family offered me money to go abroad, I actually agreed. I should have stayed to get more. That few $100,000? I spent it all already, why else would I come back? He loves me to death now. It wasn't a waste to pretend to be the type he likes all these years. Sophia listened to each sentence, her heart racing. She had always thought the Parker family sent Grace abroad as a form of exile, not knowing that she had chosen to take several $100,000 and enjoy herself abroad. Now that the money was gone, she thought of coming back. So all these years, she never liked William. She liked his money. Anger surged up and she rushed out. Grace, seeing the furious Sophia, was startled. How can you do this to William? Sophia demanded. Grace hurriedly hung up the phone and looked around, relaxing only when she confirmed no one else was there. She laughed coldly. What business is it of yours? You're just jealous that he likes me and not you. Now, she finally dropped her act. Sophia trembled with anger, feeling William's sacrifices were worthless. He gave up so much for you, but you've been deceiving him all along. She grabbed Grace's hand and began walking toward the ship's interior. I'm going to expose your true face right now. Grace panicked and began struggling fiercely. The two girls had similar strength and immediately became entangled. No one noticed that they were getting closer to the railing on the edge. Suddenly, Grace lost her footing and leaned backward, about to fall into the sea. She immediately grabbed Sophia, pulling her down too. William had come out looking for someone and witnessed this exact moment. 2 splashes sounded, and he rushed over. Gracie, without any hesitation, he jumped in. In the sea, Sophia was surrounded by water. The more she feared, the more she struggled, and the more she sank. She opened her mouth to call for help but only swallowed more seawater. The shadow of falling into the lake years ago loomed over her again. At this moment, she saw William swimming over. William, save me. But in the next second, that figure moved farther and farther away from her. Swimming toward Grace in another direction, he had unhesitatingly chosen to save Grace. Sophia felt as if struck by lightning, like a long needle piercing her body. Her entire being trembled with pain. But now she could only watch as their figures grew smaller and smaller. Her vision grew blurrier and her mind heavier. The shadow of death enveloped her, and Sophia finally understood in despair. The boy who once resolutely came to save her had truly disappeared forever. At this moment, she heard the sound of her heart dying. However, the sea surface suddenly broke open with another ray of light. Before losing consciousness, she vaguely saw someone swimming toward her. It was Ethan. But why did that figure seem so similar to her memory? Because of the long time in the sea, Sophia was unconscious for several days. She had a dream where the young man swimming toward her looked a bit different from William. The next moment, she snapped her eyes open. In the hospital room, surprisingly, it was William who was by her side. Sophia recalled the young man in her dream and suddenly felt suspicious. But before she could ask, William began speaking darkly. Sophia Smith, what did Grace ever do to you that made you so vicious as to push her into the sea? Sophia then realized that Grace must have preemptively blamed her. She had done wrong, yet she had the audacity to turn things around. She pulled me into the sea. William looked at her with mockery. How would she have the courage to pull the illustrious Miss Smith into the sea? Recalling the truth she discovered before falling into the sea, Sophia hurriedly explained. Because I heard her on the phone. William, she's deceived you. Grace isn't with you because she likes you. She's after your money. She spoke urgently but found him looking at her coldly. Sophia Smith, when did you learn to frame others? William didn't believe her at all. What I'm saying is true, but in his eyes, these words were just her jealous attempt to frame Grace. Sophia Smith, you're beyond help. Let me tell you, no matter what, I will never like you. Stop dreaming. William slammed the door as he left. Sophia sat stunned on the hospital bed, her eyes red, but still she didn't cry. At this point, Ethan walked in. William had spoken too loudly, and he had clearly heard those words. He stood before the bed, looking at Sophia as she struggled to hold back tears. But fortunately, unlike others, he didn't try to console her with words. Didn't tell her William was still immature and would eventually see her worth. Everyone knew those were just excuses for him not loving her. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, his voice husky. If you want to cry, go ahead. No one will come in. Strangely, Sophia had been able to hold back her tears before. She had been holding them back for so many years. But upon hearing these words, it was as if she suddenly lost control. Tears poured down, and Ethan suddenly embraced her, gently stroking her head in comfort. In the past, Sophia wouldn't have dared to hug him. Now, she didn't care about that. She leaned against his waist and cried her heart out. Finally, she had completely soaked Ethan's suit. He helplessly took off his jacket, and the photo in his pocket floated down again. Sophia glanced at it, her pupils suddenly contracting. She hadn't seen wrong, had she? The girl in the photo, it was actually her. Her eyes, swollen from crying, instantly froze, and she looked at Ethan in disbelief. Hadn't he said that the person in the photo was the one he liked? Ethan, seeing she had discovered it, wasn't flustered. He simply picked up the photo. Then he calmly said, "That's right, I like you." Sophia's reaction was as if she'd been struck by lightning. "Ethan, what? What are you saying? How is this possible?" Ethan's gaze remained steady. "Why isn't it possible? Didn't you dislike girls?" Ethan laughed, but it was from exasperation. "If I didn't like you, how could I have prepared flat shoes and soda outside the dance room when you practiced, stayed up all night correcting your error workbooks, secretly had servants bring you snacks, and saved you from the water twice? Sophia, how much more must I like you?" Now Sophia was completely frozen. Like a thunderbolt, it struck heavily on her heart. She excitedly grabbed him, even her voice trembling. "Ethan, what did you say? The person who did all those things was you. The one who saved me from the lake was also you." Ethan didn't understand why her reaction was so extreme and simply nodded. Back then, Sophia had already passed out in the lake. When she woke up, she was surrounded by people. Only the button she clutched in her hand confirmed to her that the person was William. "But the button I pulled off was clearly William's." Ethan frowned, thought for a moment, and remembered. "The housekeeper bought 2 of that suit. I only wore it once, and that time saving you was the only time I ever wore it." After hearing this, Sophia's mind went blank. So, the person who had cared for her, looked after her, and even saved her, making her heart flutter, had always been Ethan Heavens. She had been in love with the wrong person. Ethan had already guessed from her reaction. He tilted Sophia's chin, forcing her to look at him. "So, you liked William because you thought he saved you." Sophia looked at him with red eyes, saying nothing, but her expression said it all. Ethan's eyes darkened frighteningly. God knows how hard it had been for him all these years, thinking Sophia liked his brother and having to suppress his own feelings. Both fell silent for a moment. After a long while, Ethan leaned closer to her, their breaths intermingling. Sophia unconsciously blushed, her earlobes reddening, and she instinctively wanted to back away. But Ethan wouldn't allow it. "Then, would you consider liking the person who truly saved you?" Sophia stayed in the hospital for a week. The first thing she did upon leaving was to return home and quickly pack up everything related to William. The photos she had secretly taken of him, the medal he had won at a sports meet that she had collected, various items related to him that she had carefully preserved over the years. As much as Sophia had treasured these things before, she was now just as resolute in throwing them away. After disposing of these items, she went to the Parker house to find William. "William, please return all the things I've given you over the years." William heard the coldness in her tone and didn't know what game she was playing. "What are you trying to do?" Since the person who saved her wasn't him, the gifts she had given shouldn't belong to him either. "Return all the things I gave you," she repeated, and William frowned. "Sophia Smith, have you gone mad?" She was unusually insistent. "You wouldn't want Grace to know you're still keeping my things, would you?" Those words successfully angered William. His eyes darkened, and he angrily returned to his room. As if to prove he didn't treasure her gifts, he cleared them out one by one. He picked up the deer lamp from his bedside. It was a custom-made lamp that Sophia had specially ordered. William had a fear of darkness but couldn't sleep with the lights on, so Sophia had given him this lamp. "This lamp can hold calming incense. Place it by your bed, and you'll be able to sleep," she had told him. For all these years, with the deer lamp's companionship, he had indeed slept well. Next, he began taking down the painting hanging on the wall. It was the work of William's favorite painter, who had come to Northridge for an exhibition when they were in freshman year. But they had exams that day, and he couldn't go. He had thought he would miss it, but unexpectedly, Sophia had boldly snuck out, bought back this painting with the artist's signature. For this, she had skipped the exam and was punished by the school. William took down the painting, recalling the intense love in her eyes when she had given it to him, and his expression became increasingly complex. Next, he took out a deep blue scarf from the wardrobe. One particularly cold winter, he had noticed girls in class knitting scarves and casually mentioned to Sophia, "Miss Smith, is my birthday gift ready? I want a scarf knitted by you." Originally, he was just speaking randomly. After all, Sophia had grown up privileged. How could she possibly do such things? But unexpectedly, on his birthday, Sophia actually gave him a hand-knitted scarf. At that time, several of her fingers had bandages on them, having been pricked by needles countless times. This was the first time William realized that his room had so many things from Sophia. He also realized that over the years, Sophia had truly been almost incredibly good to him. Before he knew it, he had cleared out a whole box of items. Looking at these things, William suddenly felt a tightness in his chest. He couldn't help but ask again, "What are you trying to do?" Sophia emotionlessly hugged the box, thinking to herself that she was making a clean break. "Don't worry, I won't cling to you anymore. From now on, I wish you get what you desire, a long and happy life with Grace." William heard the sarcasm in her words, and the strange feeling in his heart deepened. But Sophia took the items and left without hesitation. This time, it was William who stared at her retreating figure. For some reason, he felt like something had silently slipped away from his heart. It seemed he had lost something very important. As for Sophia, after clearing out the items between them, she immediately asked her parents to arrange a family dinner. On the weekend, she invited all the Parker family members, saying she had a big announcement to make. At the Smith mansion, William arrived last. As soon as he entered, he saw Sophia and his brother sitting together on the sofa. Sophia was looking at her phone while eating grapes, but she couldn't quite reach them. Ethan actually took the grapes and fed them to her mouth. "Open your mouth." Sophia smiled sweetly and obediently ate it. William was stunned. When had they become so close? He felt somewhat uncomfortable but didn't think too much of it. After all, Ethan had never shown interest in women. Until everyone had arrived. Mr. and Mrs. Parker looked at Sophia. "Sophie, didn't you say you had something to announce? What big news is it?" Hearing this, Sophia and Ethan exchanged a glance. Then, they held hands and stood up. William's pupils suddenly contracted, only now noticing that they were wearing identical rings. Were those couple rings? Amid everyone's shocked gazes, Sophia slowly began to speak. "The big announcement is, Ethan and I are together, but Sophie, don't you like William?" Mrs. Parker looked at their intertwined fingers and the rings on their fingers, astonished. Ethan was about to say something, but Sophia gently tugged his hand, looked up at him, and smiled. Then she said, "Let me explain this to everyone. Actually, the person I've always liked is Ethan." Subsequently, Sophia explained the misunderstanding caused by believing that the things Ethan had done were William's doing. "So I've always liked the person who truly cared for me and saved me, Ethan. I was mistaken before, which has caused inconvenience to everyone, especially to William. I'm very sorry." After speaking, she gave William a slight bow, then pulled Ethan to sit down, not looking at William again. William had been silent since they announced their relationship. Even when Sophia apologized to him, he didn't respond. He felt something was off. Why did his heart feel so constricted? As for Mr. and Mrs. Parker, they had been torn because of William's resistance. Now that the misunderstanding was cleared up, a major problem in their hearts was resolved. "That's great. If that's the case, we agree to your relationship with Ethan." After saying this, they turned to look at William. Mrs. Parker stared at him for a long time. In the end, she still wouldn't relent. "But don't think this means you can be with Grace. Let me tell you, as long as I live, she will never be allowed into the Parker family." Originally expecting William to say something outrageous to anger her, this time, William just coldly snorted and turned to leave the Smith home. As he reached the door, William felt slightly better. His chest had been feeling tight, probably because being with them was too oppressive. He walked out, thinking of what Sophia had just said, and his heart inexplicably skipped a beat, followed by a moment of suffocating pain. Claiming she mistook my brother for me and that's why she liked me. Sophia Smith is too ridiculous. He called Grace, but for some reason, she didn't pick up. Just then, a group of his school friends called him out for drinks. He usually disliked their gatherings, but right now it seemed perfect to relieve his recent frustrations, so he agreed. What he didn't expect was that this was actually a setup by that group. When William arrived, they were already quite drunk, with various bottles of alcohol on the table. Seeing William enter, one of them pulled him over to start drinking, while the others gradually said they had drunk enough and left. Eventually, William was also a bit drunk, and he noticed that only 3 or 4 swaying figures remained. William felt nauseous and told the few remaining people he was going to the bathroom. But when William returned, the room was completely empty except for the bottles. Not a single person remained. At this point, a waiter walked in. "Excuse me, sir, your total bill comes to $86,342. We'll round it down to $86,000. Would you prefer to pay by WeChat, Alipay, or credit card?" The waiter politely stood in front of him with the bill, smiling. William realized that these bastards had called him here to pay the bill, but his credit and bank cards had long been frozen by his father. The balance on his phone had also been nearly spent during his time with Grace. Left with no choice, he had to call his brother for urgent help. After waiting for quite some time, William stood at the front desk, facing the waiter awkwardly. But the person who came was Sophia. Sophia coldly swiped her card and left without wanting to exchange a single word with him. William followed her out, seeing Sophia hail a taxi by the roadside. William taunted her. "Where's my brother? What, you've just gotten together and he's not even willing to pick you up." Sophia gave him a cold glance and looked back at her phone without speaking. William felt uncomfortable and, having had some alcohol, was careless with his words. In a moment of anger, he said, "My brother has never liked women, especially not manipulative women like you. Otherwise, how could he have just gotten together with you and already be ordering you to solve problems, not even having time to pick you up?" Sophia had originally not wanted to waste words with him, but he actually said such things. "William Parker, your brother is in a meeting. If he wasn't worried about his useless brother being beaten up, I wouldn't have appeared here at all." After saying this, she glanced at him again before adding, "Also, you'd better stay away from me now. Don't let your Grace see you with me so late." As soon as she finished speaking, the car arrived, and Sophia immediately got in and left, no longer paying attention to William. William watched her retreating figure, thought of what she had just said, and felt something strange pass through his heart, making him somewhat uncomfortable. He took out his phone to call Grace, but for some reason, she still wasn't answering. Too lazy to get a taxi, William walked aimlessly down the street when his phone rang. It was his brother, Ethan. "Hello, brother?" On the other end, Ethan heard his brother's slurred speech and frowned deeply. "Look at how drunk you are. Where's Sophie?" "Sophie, she's long gone in a taxi. Didn't she tell you?" William mocked. What kind of couple were they if they didn't even share such basic information? She came to find me. I'll hang up now. You go home yourself. She's going to find you this late to do what? Beep, beep, beep." Hearing the dial tone on the other end, William couldn't help but want to swear. That improper woman Sophia, not even married yet, running to a man's house so late. But at that moment, he suddenly caught sight of a figure in the distance that looked somewhat like Grace. Thinking he was seeing things, William blinked several times, squinting to identify the person more carefully. It really was Grace. What was she doing outside so late? And he had called Grace several times with no answer. He suddenly ran forward to stop Grace. "Gracie, what are you doing?" Grace probably hadn't expected to see him here. When she heard William's voice, she abruptly stopped. A flash of panic crossed her eyes. They were separated by a bridge, both in the middle of the bridge, but Grace was below it. There were stairs at both ends of the bridge that led down. William told Grace to wait for him below while he quickly ran toward the bridgehead. What he didn't see was that, as he ran toward the bridgehead, Grace shook her head at a shadowy figure in the darkness below the bridge. The moment William walked down the stairs, that black figure disappeared into the darkness on the other side, becoming invisible. "Gracie, what are you doing out so late?" William finally reached Grace's side, out of breath. Grace suddenly threw herself into his arms with a sorrowful expression, her voice barely audible. I just came out for a walk." William sensed something was wrong and pulled Grace back to look into her eyes. "Gracie, tell me the truth. What's really going on with you?" After running once, William was now completely sober. He asked Grace seriously, his voice filled with concern. Grace seemed caught off guard. As she looked at him, her eyes gradually reddened and her voice began to choke up. When she finally spoke, she blinked and a large tear immediately fell. Look, don't cry. What happened? Why were you alone by the lake so late? William asked, his eyes full of heartache. I just felt a bit upset and wanted to walk alone. As she spoke, Grace began to sob quietly. What are you upset about? William's eyes were filled with concern as he gently pulled her into his arms, his tone full of tenderness. I feel like Sophia might not like me. She probably hates me for coming back and taking you from her, right? Grace sobbed while speaking, her voice filled with brokenness and despair that made William's heart ache. This girl had done nothing wrong. She had only been exiled because he fell in love with her and then was pushed into the sea by Sophia. She had endured so much hardship. I'm sorry, Gracie, it's all because of me. But don't worry, Sophia is now with my brother, so she probably won't bother you anymore. What did you say? Grace, who had been upset and sorrowful just a moment ago, suddenly widened her eyes to look at William. William sighed and said, There's a rather complicated story behind this. I'll explain it to you later, but basically, she's now my sister-in-law, and in the future, she won't have much to do with us and won't affect us. William held Grace and continued to explain. As she listened to him, Grace's thoughts were completely elsewhere. If Sophia became William's sister-in-law, wouldn't what she had said become leverage? Originally, because Sophia liked William, Grace could have said that Sophia made up those things to frame her and win William. But now Sophia suddenly doesn't like William anymore and has even become his sister-in-law through a transformation. If she then tells William those things, no, she can't let Sophia succeed. A hint of malice flashed in Grace's eyes. It seemed she needed to find a way to completely eliminate this obstacle to her obtaining the Parker fortune. Since she previously liked the younger brother but is now with the older one, she's quite adaptable. But she wondered what William's older brother Ethan thinks about this. First, she needed to create a heartfelt performance between William and Sophia in front of Ethan. Then, she would drive a wedge between Sophia and Ethan. She didn't believe that, as a man, Ethan could watch his own wife flirt and have ambiguous relations with his younger brother. Once Ethan no longer trusted Sophia, no matter what she said, they wouldn't believe her. As for William, he would feel guilty for betraying her and compensate her even more. 3 days later, the Parker and Smith families jointly hosted a banquet. The main purpose was, of course, to announce Ethan and Sophia's engagement, while also promoting deeper cooperation between the two families. Many influential people attended that day, making it a very lively event. Since William and Sophia had now canceled their engagement, it was just a banquet, and he could bring any dance partner without the Parker family interfering. William, predictably, brought Grace. After learning about this banquet, Grace had been planning early. She had obtained some hallucinogenic drugs from old friends. She just needed to put them in a drink, and with the help of alcohol, they would take effect. After drinking, one would first feel drowsy, and after a while, they would feel hot all over. At that point, if she could get Sophia to drink it and then wait for her to go rest, she would then bring William, who had also been drugged, to Sophia's room. Next, she would tell Ethan that Sophia wasn't feeling well, and he would certainly go check on her. Then the show would begin. She just needed to pretend to be hurt and incredulous, and no one would suspect her. After all, who would suspect a person who returned from abroad for her boyfriend, only to hand him over to another woman? Once the commotion started, she would only need to guide William to push all the blame onto Sophia, and her plan would succeed. Sophia, anyone who dared threaten her would not end well. On the day of the engagement banquet, Sophia wore a white silk strapless fishtail dress. Her hair was lightly pinned up with 2 hairpins behind her ears, with the rest falling softly to her chest. She looked elegant and serene, like an otherworldly fairy. In contrast, Ethan Parker wore a sharp suit, handsome and upright. His well-defined features appeared even more three-dimensional under the lights, while his affectionate eyes always gazed lovingly at the person beside him. Standing together, their hands tightly clasped, their ring fingers prominently displaying their engagement rings. Anyone could see they were a couple deeply in love, not one that had just gotten together. When William brought Grace into the Parker family's garden, the first thing he saw was their tightly clasped hands and the happy smiles on their faces. For some reason, he felt suffocated. Despite being in an open-air banquet venue, he felt like the air wasn't circulating, as if he couldn't breathe. He didn't even notice that his grip on Grace's hand was tightening, as if he might crush it. Grace finally couldn't bear the pain and let out a cry. She tugged her hand slightly, freeing it from William's grip. In an annoyed tone, she asked, "Will, what are you doing? You're hurting me." She looked at her red, hot, and slightly swollen hand, shaking it gently to try to relieve some of the pain. William lowered his eyes and gave a bitter laugh internally. What was wrong with him? Shaking his head to dispel those strange thoughts, he grabbed Grace's hand and gently blew on it. "I'm sorry, Gracie. I was thinking about something else and wasn't paying attention. Let's go get some medicine for you." He led Grace toward the house. Grace intentionally wanted to get him away. Hearing him say this, she quickly stopped him and said, "I'm a bit tired. I want to sit for a while. Why don't you go get the medicine and I'll wait for you here?" William thought it made sense, so he let her go find a place to rest while he went inside to get medicine. Grace waited until William was far away, then quietly walked to a more secluded side of the drink table and took 2 glasses of wine. She discreetly opened the small bell on her hand, which contained 2 identical pills. She took one out and, when no one was looking, quietly dropped it into one of the wine glasses. After the pill completely dissolved, she nonchalantly carried the 2 glasses of wine to Ethan and Sophia. Seeing Sophia looking at her, Grace smiled and handed her one of the glasses. Once she accepted it, Grace said, "Don't look at me like that. You used to like William, but now there's no conflict between us, so can we make up?" As she spoke, Grace forcefully clinked her glass against Sophia's, then smiled and downed the wine in her glass in one go. Sophia glanced at Ethan, frowned slightly, but still took a sip. Seeing her drink, Grace smiled and linked arms with her, saying, "So now we've made up, okay?" Sophia nodded slightly, somewhat uncomfortable as she tried to move her arm that was being tightly embraced. Grace seemed to suddenly remember something and showed them her hand, complaining piteously, "Look, I accidentally hurt my hand earlier. Will said he would get me some medicine, but it's been so long and he hasn't come back yet." She glanced at Ethan, saying, "Ethan, why don't you go find Will and tell him to hurry up? It really hurts." Sophia, seeing that Grace didn't seem to have any ulterior motives and they were in the Parker home, figured she wouldn't dare try anything. So she told Ethan to go, and although Ethan frowned slightly at Grace, he still went. Seeing everyone leave, Grace also stopped clinging to Sophia. Sophia gave her a glance, content to be left alone. But after a while, she suddenly began to feel dizzy and staggered slightly. Grace came over to support her, her voice full of surprise. "What's wrong? Don't tell me you got drunk from just one sip of wine?" Sophia shook her head. That shouldn't be possible, but she really was dizzy. She had a vague feeling that something wasn't right. Mrs. Parker saw she seemed unwell and came over with concern. "What's wrong, Sophie? Are you tired? Would you like to go rest for a bit?" Sophia felt she really was feeling unwell and nodded, apologizing for needing to rest. Grace seized the opportunity to step forward, saying, "I'll take you to rest. Let Aunt Victoria attend to the guests. It's not far, right?" Sophia felt increasingly uneasy, but couldn't push her away in front of everyone. She had no choice but to let Grace support her to the room. But surprisingly, Grace actually helped her to the room and then left. Seeing she didn't return, Sophia finally relaxed and went to sleep. After a while, Sophia began to feel hot. She turned on the air conditioner, but still felt very hot. Uncomfortable, she decided to take a shower. While she was showering, what she didn't see was Grace supporting an equally dizzy, and even more disoriented, William into the room. He was laid right beside where she had just been lying. Grace even turned off the lights as she left. When Sophia finished her shower and came out wrapped in a towel, she heard a commotion outside, including Grace's voice. "Really, Sophia said she's not feeling well. You should go check on her," but the lights in the room had been turned off, though Sophia was sure she had left them on. Moreover, after the shower, the heat in her body hadn't subsided much. In fact, it seemed to be getting worse. Both her ears and the door outside were transmitting clear sounds. At this moment, she heard a male voice from behind. "Sophie, water." "So hot." Sophia, with a splitting headache, pressed herself against the wall in fright. "Who's there?" In her ear came Ethan's voice. "Sophie, what's wrong?" At the same time, the door was pushed open from outside, and the light from the corridor shone in through the doorway, faintly revealing Ethan, Grace, and Mr. and Mrs. Parker. At this moment, Sophia finally found the switch, and with a click, the lights came on, illuminating the room. Sophia wrapped in a towel, William on the bed with a flushed face, and Ethan, Grace, and the shocked Mr. and Mrs. Parker at the door formed a very awkward closed loop. "What are you two doing?" came the exclamation from Mr. and Mrs. Parker at the door. Sophia leaned uncomfortably against the wall. Ethan quickly took off his suit jacket, put it on her, and wanted to take her out. The faces of Mr. and Mrs. Parker were both black with anger. At their eldest son's engagement party, his future bride was found half-dressed in a room with their younger son. The Parker family had never had such a scandal. "Dad, Mom, I'll take Sophie to my room first. She's very unwell. Let's all meet in the living room in half an hour," Ethan said. He was about to lead Sophia away when William, lying on the bed, suddenly opened his eyes. "Sophie?" William seemed not fully conscious, turning over restlessly while calling Sophia's name. Everyone present was shocked for a moment. Mr. Parker's face grew darker as he sternly said, "Ethan, you take Sophia to change first." Then he turned to Mrs. Parker and said, "I'll go send away the guests. You and Grace find a way to wake up this good-for-nothing son." With a sigh, Mr. Parker frowned as he walked out. Ethan took Sophia to his room. As soon as they entered, Sophia broke away from his hands. Barely conscious, she rushed to the table and gulped down 2 large glasses of water, but still felt uncomfortable. At this point, it would be foolish not to realize what was happening. Sophia was flushed with her forehead and cheeks red, sweating profusely, lying face down on the bed with cold sweat running down her back. "Ethan, I didn't expect it would be like this." Sophia's head was buried in the blanket, her voice muffled, sounding both complainant and coquettish. Ethan also poured himself a glass of water, drinking from the same cup as her in one gulp. He removed his earpiece and walked to the bedside. "Sophie, are you still feeling very unwell?" he asked. Ethan crouched down in front of Sophia, stroking her hair scattered on the bed, and asked in a low voice. Sophia's head was swimming. Hearing his question, she softly nodded. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, cradling her head on his lap, gently wiping the sweat from her forehead. Sophia closed her eyes. Though she couldn't see Ethan's face, her other senses seemed amplified. She could smell Ethan's pleasant cologne, a faint scent of sandalwood mixed with orange and lemon freshness. She could hear Ethan's heartbeat, rhythmically pulsing in his chest beneath the thin shirt. She could feel the gentle pressure and warmth of Ethan's hand as it stroked her hair and face with tenderness and concern. Sophia opened her eyes to look at Ethan, her eyes misted over with a watery haze, red at the corners, adding both vulnerability and allure. "Ethan?" Sophia was a bit nervous, her voice gentle and delicate. Ethan lowered his head to look at her. "I want to kiss you." After saying this nervously, Sophia swallowed, staring at Ethan without daring to move. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, took a deep breath to calm himself, his voice hoarse and deep. "No, I can't kiss you in your current state. Be good, wait until later?" Sophia shook her head, red-eyed. "No, I want to kiss you now." As she spoke, she reached up to hook her arms around Ethan's neck, pulling him down with some force. Ethan's fists clenched then relaxed, his voice even more husky. "Sophie, don't regret this later." He suddenly lifted Sophia up to straddle his lap, one hand supporting her waist, the other cradling the back of her head. He leaned in close to her face, his hot breath mingling with hers. Sophia closed her eyes and leaned forward to kiss him. The moment their lips met, Sophia seemed to hear Ethan sigh. Then came increasingly deep kisses and hands with gradually increasing pressure, holding Sophia so tightly that she lost all ability to think, her mind completely blank, only able to remember the person before her. When Ethan brought Sophia downstairs, everyone was already seated in the living room. Mr. and Mrs. Parker sat angrily on one side, with Mr. and Mrs. Smith on the other. Mr. Smith was glaring fiercely at William, who sat across from him. Grace had tears in her eyes, looking at William with a mixture of disbelief and grievance. William sat irritably beside Grace, frowning and not knowing what he was thinking. Seeing them come down, everyone looked over. Noting they were holding hands, Mr. Parker frowned slightly but said nothing. As for William, he stared intently at them as they descended, his eyes filled with coldness. "You've arrived. Please sit, Mr. Parker broke the awkward atmosphere, though his voice still contained anger. Ethan looked at his pale-faced fiancé and then at his younger brother, who had been infuriated by this incident, his eyes showing icy displeasure. Mrs. Parker's voice was still relatively gentle as she asked, "We've already questioned William. He says he might have been drunk. Sophie, what's your explanation?" Sophia still felt the effects of the drug, with a headache and no strength. Having just been tormented by Ethan in the room, her entire being exuded an air of languor and exhaustion. She glanced at William and Grace, leaning against Ethan's embrace, and gave a faint smile. "I haven't heard what William and Grace have said, so let them repeat it." William was stunned by her words, opened his mouth as if to say something, but then closed it again without speaking. Grace began to sob quietly. I know Will must have mistaken Sophie for me when he was drunk." Sophia laughed coldly to herself. So she was still pretending? William frowned, feeling irritated. "How many more times must I say it? I was drunk, Grace supported me into an empty room, and then I knew nothing more. Do I need to spell out the rest?" Grace's tears fell instantly. "I took you to another room, not this one. Gracie, I really don't know why I ended up in the same room as Sophia. Do you believe me or not?" William implored. Grace turned away, refusing to look at him, her shoulders shaking with sobs. Even Mrs. Parker couldn't bear to see her cry like this and comforted her softly before turning to Sophia. "Sophie, they've both spoken. Now it's your turn to explain." Sophia nodded. "Originally, I was with Ethan toasting guests, then Grace came over with 2 glasses of wine to make peace with me. Then she said her hand hurt and had Ethan go fetch William for medicine. Later, I felt dizzy and wanted to rest, which you saw, Aunt Victoria." Mrs. Parker nodded. Indeed, she had been the one to suggest Sophie rest. Sophia continued. "Then Grace accompanied me to the room to lie down, and I fell asleep. Later, I felt very hot, so I took a shower. When I came out, I saw the lights in my room had been turned off. Everyone knows I have mild night blindness, so there was no light at all in the room. I was feeling my way to the light switch when you all arrived." Mrs. Parker was about to speak when Sophia added another sentence. "My theory is that someone drugged me." Everyone gasped in shock. How could this be possible? Who would dare drug the future bride at an engagement party? Sophia looked coolly at Grace, smiling slightly. "Wouldn't you agree, Grace?" Grace was startled. "Are you suggesting I drugged you?" Now even Mrs. Parker couldn't sit still, her voice stern as she addressed Sophia. "Sophie, this is a serious accusation. Aunt Victoria, whether I'm making it up or not, we'll see shortly," Sophia said. Then she looked at William, laughing coldly. "William Parker, I once told you she doesn't love you, but you didn't believe me. Later I discovered I loved Ethan, so I stopped caring about your affairs. But now I'm sorry, even if you defend Grace, I will punish her severely, because she has now interfered with me and Ethan." Ethan, sensing her trembling, gently patted her shoulder to calm her anger. Grace hadn't expected Sophia to directly confront her in front of so many people. Moreover, she couldn't understand why, after such an incident, Ethan still appeared to completely trust and love her. Afraid Sophia might want a showdown, Grace immediately began crying. "I just made a joke with a friend. Why are you targeting me like this? Is it because you actually still love Will, so you slept with Will and then come to frame me to drive a wedge between me and Will?" William also furrowed his brow, looking coldly at Sophia. He felt Grace's words made sense. Considering Sophia's past behavior, she was indeed capable of such things. Sophia was about to rebut when Ethan stopped her, smiling at everyone and saying, "Now it's my turn, isn't it?" Mrs. Parker looked at her elegant, polite, yet ice-cold eldest son, her face full of heartache. "Ethan, you're the victim in this. If you want to speak for Sophie, that's not necessary. We'll figure this out." Ethan shook his head, taking out his phone, opening the messaging app, and showing everyone his chat history with Sophia. "Everyone can look. This is the chat history between Sophie and me today." After placing the phone on the table, everyone gathered around to look. Ethan held Sophia and sat back on the sofa. 7 p.m. Ethan, I'm feeling unwell, dizzy. 7 p.m. What's wrong? You should rest then. I'll come down right away. 7 p.m. No need. I'm now in the first floor, second room on the left, sleeping. You can come find me here later. 7 p.m. All right. Are you hungry? Should I bring you something to eat? 7 p.m. A bit. I'd like Auntie Wang's shrimp dumplings. Can you ask her to make some and bring them over? 7 p.m. No vinegar, a little chilly. 7 p.m. Got it. You sleep for now, I'll be there soon. After reading, everyone dispersed a bit. Mr. Parker looked at Ethan and said, "This only proves that Sophie was indeed feeling unwell around 7 o'clock and went to sleep, but what happened afterward, no one can confirm." Still thinking Sophia was making unfounded accusations, Grace laughed coldly to herself. These few chat messages couldn't prove anything. Actually, lighting up the chat records was just to show you that Sophie was indeed feeling unwell at 7. But there's something else you probably didn't notice. Sophie and I were on a call the entire time, Ethan said. As he spoke, he took out his phone, clicked on the hidden icon in the upper left corner. They had been connected via microphone the whole time. Then Ethan pressed the end call button, and with a beep, the call ended, showing a call duration of 3 hours and 48 minutes. Everyone looked down at the current time, 11:14 p.m. That meant they had been on a call since the very beginning, and Ethan had heard everything Sophia experienced. "I'm not a fool," Ethan said, looking at his stunned brother, then turning to Grace beside him. After a moment of silence, he addressed his parents. "Dad, Mom, from the moment Grace came over with drinks to toast us, we sensed something was off." Sophia adjusted her sitting position, changing from leaning against Ethan to completely nestling in his arms. Ethan soothingly stroked her, continuing, "But we didn't expect she would dare to drug us, so when Sophie told me she felt unwell and her body felt strange, I immediately had my assistant take that glass for testing. The results should be back soon." Hearing this, Grace was already panicking. She hadn't anticipated they would be on guard against her from the start. "Even if I gave Sophie that drink, it could have been she who drugged it herself." Hearing Grace still trying to deny it, Sophia couldn't help but laugh. "Ha ha ha, you're still struggling." Ethan's gaze swept over, his dark eyes fixing on Grace, his face now ice cold. "Grace, have you forgotten what you said? After putting William on the bed, what did you say? Do you remember?" Grace and William simultaneously looked up at Ethan, seeing his cold smile. William, realizing what had happened, was stunned. He slowly turned to look at Grace beside him, his face showing shock, disappointment, and doubt. After a few seconds, he pushed away Grace's arm that was linked with his face ashen. "What else do you have to say?" No, Will, let me explain." Grace grabbed his hand in panic, only to be pushed away again. "There's nothing to explain. I'll investigate your past affairs." "Grace, you'd better not have lied to me about anything else." With these words, William refused to look at her again, striding past his family and quickly walking out of the Parker home. As he left, the front door slammed with a tremendous bang. Everyone reacted slowly to this sudden turn of events, with only Mr. Parker's "Where are you going so late?" and Grace's crying echoing in the living room. "Ethan, what did you mean by that last remark?" Mr. Smith couldn't help but ask. "What had Grace said?" Grace helped William into the room when the drug was already taking effect, so I guess William wanted something, and Grace might have heard movement from the bathroom. Guess Sophie was taking a shower, so she laid William on the bed, whispered intimately in his ear, and said she'd take a shower first and then come back to join him, then turned off the lights and left. The important part wasn't what Grace had said, but the fact that she claimed she initially took William to another room and didn't know why he ended up in Sophie's room. So the question was, if Grace hadn't taken William to Sophie's room, how would Ethan, who was on a call with Sophie, know what she said to William? This proved that Grace had been lying from the start. It was she who deliberately brought William to Sophie's room, even in her panic, not noticing that Sophie's phone was connected to Ethan's, lying right by the pillow. Grace's crying now elicited no sympathy from anyone. They only found her ridiculous and pitiful. Mr. and Mrs. Parker were especially heartbroken. Mrs. Parker glared fiercely at the kneeling Grace, furiously scolding. "You ungrateful girl, to think we sponsored and nurtured you when we liked you. I thought long and hard before giving you that $500,000 to test you. I thought if you refused, proving you and Will truly loved each other, I would persuade his father to let you two be together. We would find another way with Sophie. But you chose the money yourself, took it and left Will, and now that the money's gone, you've come running back, even setting up and framing others. You truly brought this on yourself. What did you say?" The front door was suddenly pushed open by William, who had a test report in his hand that he had just taken from his brother's assistant. William had intended to go drinking when he left, but remembering what happened a few days ago, he didn't want to see those false friends. So he hadn't gone far, just standing outside the garden smoking, when he saw his brother's assistant approaching with a document. He went over to ask if it was about the wine Sophie had drunk, and finding out it was, with his own wine testing positive for the same hallucinogenic drug, he took the report. He couldn't understand where Grace would get such things, since their friends were all from well-supervised wealthy families, who would certainly be put under house arrest before even touching such substances. So he took the report back, intending to ask her where she bought it, only to overhear his mother's words. William walked over, threw the document on the table, and roughly grabbed Grace's shoulders. His eyes, bloodshot with anger, came close to Grace's face, forcing her to look at him. Is what my mother said all true? So last time Sophie was telling the truth? The answer was obvious. There was no need to ask again. William simply didn't want to believe it. He slumped onto the sofa, having experienced too much in one day. He had suddenly lost everything he once believed in, which was too heavy a blow for him. Grace shook her head desperately, tears streaming down her face, smearing her delicate makeup. A beautiful woman crying can be truly heart-wrenching. What a pity. Sophia watched the unfolding drama with cold eyes, shaking her head slightly. What a pity she had brought this upon herself. Sophia tugged at Ethan's sleeve, wanting him to accompany her upstairs to sleep. She didn't want to stay here any longer. Ethan embraced her as they stood up, telling his parents they were going to bed. Seeing the test report William had brought in, he thought for a moment before opening it to look. As expected, both their drinks contained the same drug. He handed the report to his father, saying quietly, "Dad, you handle this. We're going up first." "All right, go on. Take good care of Sophie." Mr. and Mrs. Smith also hugged their daughter affectionately, telling Sophie to rest well. With the truth revealed, things became much simpler. Investigating Grace was not a difficult task for the Parker family. Within 2 days, all of Grace's information was delivered to Mr. and Mrs. Parker. Only then did they discover that after Grace went abroad, she had barely attended classes, spending her days with so-called high society young masters. She only planned to return after spending all her money, even maintaining ambiguous relationships with several local ruffians. Mr. Parker was so angry his face turned red as he looked at the information. Mrs. Parker was even more heartbroken. They had spent so much money sponsoring Grace because they had seen her diligence, ambition, and resilience. But now, such wonderful resources and opportunities had been carelessly squandered by Grace. She had even dared to conspire with those people to drug Sophie and William. According to their investigation, the drug was a newly developed hallucinogenic substance from abroad. After consumption, it could cause temporary excitement and hallucinations, but had significant side effects, including addiction potential and damage to the kidneys and liver. Such a thing she had dared to use on their son and Sophie. "What should we do? Send her away again?" Mr. Parker asked with a deep sigh. "What's the use of sending her away? Her legs work fine, won't she come back?" Mrs. Parker's tone was equally grim. They had truly witnessed what it meant to nurture a viper to help an ungrateful person. "Then, let's report it to the police. I'll speak with my friends." "Let's do that for now." A few days later, Grace was arrested for using prohibited substances to poison others. The news was somehow posted on the school website after a few days, and the post exploded with comments. Discussions erupted among the students. That day, William was eating in the cafeteria when he heard discussions behind him. The speakers probably didn't realize that the person sitting in the corner wearing a hat was William, so they didn't lower their voices. "Damn, what does this mean? Grace drugged William? Seems like it. They say the Parker family personally had her sent to prison. I wonder if there's some inside story." "What inside story? Tell me, brother." "Just guessing, but could it be that the Parker family used some means to make William marry Sophie?" "Whoa, I feel like you might have uncovered the truth." William couldn't eat anymore. He picked up his tray and walked to their table, coldly saying, "Stop speculating. Grace brought this on herself. Our family didn't use any tactics." He continued walking with his tray, took a few steps, remembered something, and called back loudly to them. "Also, I was mistaken before. Sophie doesn't like me. She only sees me as a friend. The person she loves is my brother, who will be my sister-in-law in the future. I don't want to hear anyone speaking ill of my sister-in-law behind her back." The The surrounding people couldn't help but gasp. The entire cafeteria fell silent except for the sound of the cafeteria ladies serving food. When William finally left the cafeteria, there was a collective exhale, followed by an even more intense buzz of conversation. Folks, we just witnessed drama unfold and two big bombshells at once. Does this mean the rumors in that post were all true? Who posted it anyway? Could it have been Sophie? No way, didn't William just say Sophie likes his brother? She wouldn't care about Grace's business then, right? Anyway, Grace was a campus beauty in her own right. How could she end up like this? Yeah, what could have driven her to such extremes? I heard all her school fees were sponsored by the Parker family. Really? Isn't that like the farmer and the snake? Grace is too ruthless. As William walked out of the cafeteria, the bright weather suddenly darkened, with distant thunder rumbling. William walked at a steady pace, and within a few steps, heavy rain began to fall, large drops hitting him. The rain quickly soaked his hair and clothes. Those around who hadn't brought umbrellas hurried to the cafeteria and shops for shelter. But William didn't take cover. He just walked slowly in the rain, feeling the droplets strike his body. The next morning, after a sleepless night of anguish, William encountered his brother and Sophia in the corridor. Seeing them emerge from the same room, William felt deeply uncomfortable, but he couldn't find a reason to vent. Seeing his condition, Ethan frowned and asked Sophie to go downstairs and wait for him. Sophie obediently went down. Only after her figure completely disappeared down the stairwell did Ethan ask him in a solemn voice, "Does it hurt? The feeling of being betrayed by someone you love, isn't it painful, like you can't breathe?" William lowered his head without speaking, knowing his brother was concerned for him. He had expected his brother to comfort him, but unexpectedly, Ethan sighed and said in a very sympathetic tone, "Remember this feeling well." William looked up at his brother in confusion. Why? Ethan's expression was extremely complex, his eyes filled with emotions too dense to dissolve. Because someone else was hurt like this by you for 5 years. William was startled, his heart skipping a beat. Was he referring to Sophie? Even if Sophie misunderstood and liked you all those years because she mistook me for you, her goodness to you was genuine, and the fact that you hurt her is undeniable. Ethan continued. Ethan looked at him and added, "So now that you've felt this pain, remember it well, reflect deeply. The pain you felt these few days, Sophie endured for 5 years. But even so, she was never unkind to you, never blamed you or Grace. Now think about it yesterday evening, when you still knew nothing, you were hostile toward Sophie. Don't you feel conscience-stricken?" With this reminder, William saw countless memories flooding his mind. All the ways Sophie had been good to him over the years, her care and tolerance, and all his malice, misunderstandings, and harm toward her, bit by bit engulfing him. He suddenly felt that his previous heartache seemed insignificant. The regret and tightness in his chest at this moment completely overwhelmed his previous discomfort. Seeing the kaleidoscope of expressions on his face, Ethan gave a bitter smile. "Do you know how much I wished you could give back those 5 years that were stolen by misunderstanding?" William stood dumbfounded. So his brother had also liked Sophie. Hadn't his brother disliked women? "If I were you, even if she had made a mistake, I would have made her fall in love with me, but I thank you for not cherishing her." With that, Ethan went downstairs to find Sophie, leaving William standing there. Only William remained, frozen in place, his heart aching as if thousands of ants were gnawing at it, the pain spreading throughout his body via his bloodstream. He couldn't help wanting to cry, but brother, why does the pain now hurt so much more than knowing Grace had been deceiving me? It was as if he had only just realized what he had lost. "Ethan, that looked like William," Sophie said. Sophie had finished class early today and had arranged to meet Ethan for dinner after class. Unexpectedly, it started raining heavily, and Sophie hadn't brought an umbrella, so she called Ethan to come in and pick her up. The two were sharing an umbrella, walking toward the entrance of the teaching building, when they spotted William standing in the rain. Ethan saw him too, frowning as he said, "Sophie, wait for me in the car. I'll go get an umbrella from the car for him." Sophie nodded, obediently waiting in the car for Ethan. Ethan quickly approached his brother. The rain was so heavy that it obscured his eyes, but he still recognized his brother. What was his brother doing at the school? Had he come to investigate the post? It wasn't until Ethan reached him and handed him an umbrella that William saw Sophie sitting in his brother's car. "Brother, where are you going?" he asked. Ethan frowned as he looked at him. "To dinner. Why are you standing in such heavy rain without an umbrella?" William shrugged indifferently. "I just wanted to feel the rain." "You're a grown man still acting like a child. What about Grace makes her worth you being so upset? Consider it washing away bad luck." William didn't directly answer. What could he say? He wanted to say he wasn't upset about breaking up with Grace and her betrayal. Those things made him angry, but he hadn't been upset for long. He wanted to say he had suddenly realized why he had been constantly finding fault with Sophie lately, not because he truly disliked her, but because he couldn't accept that she no longer loved him. He wanted to say that after losing Sophie, he had suddenly discovered his true feelings for her deep in his heart. He wanted to say, "Brother, could you give Sophie back to me?" But even if he told Sophie he loved her now, she wouldn't turn back. Sophie had found her true love, but he had forever lost his Sophie. William gave a bitter smile. He couldn't say anything because one was his most beloved brother and the other was the love he had missed. Let it be, William thought. As long as he could still be by her side, watching over her and protecting her, even as a brother-in-law, it was better than being strangers, right? "Brother, I want to go home and take a shower. Could you and Sophie, sister-in-law, give me a ride home before your date?" Looking at his completely soaked appearance, Ethan struggled between his cleanliness obsession and familial love, eventually relenting with a frown. "Get in the car." "Thanks," William followed behind him, brazenly getting into the car and sprawling across the back seat, not caring that he was soaked through. Seeing William lie down, the entire back row was soaked from this one movement. Ethan's eyelid twitched repeatedly, but he ultimately held back from scolding him. "There's a clean towel in the pouch behind there. Dry yourself off. The car's air conditioning is on. Don't catch a cold." Before he could finish, Ethan heard a massive sneeze from the back, and Sophie beside him couldn't help but laugh. "Let's go, brother. You standing here talking is less efficient than getting me home quickly," William said, hunching his shoulders fearlessly. He knew his brother had cleanliness issues, and this car would probably need all new upholstery when they went to dinner. But the little devil inside him rose up. Consider this revenge on his brother for taking Sophie away. They were about to enter their senior year, and both William and Sophie were swamped with internships. Sophie had it slightly better. Her arts major meant a more relaxed internship, though she often had to travel for sketching. William, from the first day, was dragged to the company by both his brother and father. Every day, he not only had to commute with them, but also face random spot checks, especially from his grandfather. Since the Grace incident, it seemed his grandfather was convinced his younger grandson was a fool, easily deceived. He took William everywhere with him all day. William couldn't even slack off or sneak away for a moment. "Will, I'm leaving first to pick up Sophie. You're going back with Dad today. He just called me. He wants you to go up and find him." William had been planning to leave early, seeing his brother leaving on time for once, but now he had to wait for his father. Overwhelmed by this unfortunate news, William slumped dejectedly on his brother's shoulder, looking utterly miserable. "Brother, when you go see sister-in-law, can't you take me along? I don't want to go find Dad." Ethan, thinking of today's plans, had a flash of amusement in his eyes. Since he wanted to come, why not bring him? "All right, let's go." "Really? Let's go, William said excitedly. It wasn't until they were in the car that William remembered something he'd forgot. He cautiously asked, "Brother, shouldn't we tell Dad?" "No need." Ethan fastened his seatbelt and started the car. "Dad will know soon enough." "Okay." The entire journey, William wondered how to greet Sophie. Although he always easily called her sister-in-law in front of his brother, when he actually saw Sophie, he couldn't bring himself to say it. It felt like once he did, he would truly lose her forever. They didn't have far to go, and in a few minutes, they reached Sophie's internship studio. Ethan got out to meet Sophie. Through the car window, William saw Sophie running with her bag and throwing herself into his brother's arms, looking up with a smile and saying something. His brother tapped Sophie's nose once, then cupped her face and squeezed it twice. Before lowering his head in that position, William turned away, lowering his head to play with his phone, smiling to himself. These two are spreading dog food on the street. But as he blinked, a teardrop fell onto his phone screen, striking his heart. The walls he had carefully built suddenly crumbled, and the pain returned. He glimpsed them approaching to open the car door. William quickly rubbed his eyes, putting on the smile from earlier. Sophie, long time no see, sister-in-law. Why are you here? Come with me right now. After searching the entire venue and finally finding his son hiding away, Mr. Parker slapped William's back, forcefully dragging him toward the exit. Hey, wait, Dad. William was pulled off balance by his father, nearly stumbling. He looked utterly defeated as he was dragged away, his eyes filled with resentment toward Ethan. Ethan, you traitor, William inwardly wailed. He had naively thought that going out with his brother meant avoiding overtime, but instead, his brother personally delivered him into his father's hands 2 hours earlier. After picking up Sophie, William followed them to this hotel. Seeing Ethan park in front of the hotel, William's expression became very awkward. He carefully chose his words. Brother, if it's inconvenient to have me along, I can go back. Surprisingly, Ethan and Sophie exchanged knowing smiles, both looking meaningfully at William before saying nothing. William scratched his head, puzzled. What's going on? Are you coming here for dinner? Ethan nodded, smiling. You don't need to worry about us, just go up first. We reserved the 18th floor. We'll join you after parking the car. But Sophie will come with me to park the car. William didn't think much of it, closed the door and watched them leave, then took the elevator directly to the 18th floor. But as soon as he stepped out, he saw his father William suddenly remembered that there were valets at this hotel who handled parking. Why would his brother need to park himself, and why go in the wrong direction? He suddenly understood what had felt off the 18th floor was the banquet hall, not a place for a dinner date. Realizing this, William immediately tried to run back to the elevator before it closed, but it was too late. He had just pressed the elevator button when he heard his father's voice. Where are you going? Come in with me. As he walked into the venue, Mr. Parker smiled broadly. I thought you wouldn't come, so I specifically asked you this morning to join the planning session. He glanced at his obedient younger son trailing behind him, who may have looked disgruntled but was still following all his instructions. Your brother said you were coming voluntarily? William gritted his teeth, forcing out a stiff smile. Yes, I wanted to come. He certainly did not. William inwardly complained as he followed his father inside. Finally, when his father went to answer a call, he got a moment to breathe. But before he could rest for even 2 minutes, his father caught him again. William, this is your Uncle Zhang, and beside him is his daughter, Olivia Wilson. Mr. Parker led William to a group of people and introduced him. Seeing no response, he nudged him. Say hello. Uncle Zhang, Miss Wilson, hello, I'm William Parker. William obediently bowed, following instructions mechanically. Hello, just call me Olivia. Olivia Wilson's voice was soft and gentle, her every gesture exuding the proper etiquette of a young lady. William was surprised, raising an eyebrow as he looked at her. Olivia. Nice name. It's a bit stuffy in here. I know a place nearby where you can see a beautiful starscape. Olivia, would you like to take a walk with me? William politely extended an invitation to Olivia. Olivia looked toward her father. Mr. Wilson nodded with a pleased smile. Go ahead, it's good for you young people to get out for a bit. All right, Olivia looked at William, nodding slightly. William, Olivia called out to him as they exited the hotel doors. Her voice remained soft and gentle. William turned to look at her, seeing Olivia standing in place with a faint smile, her eyes full of gentleness. What is it? He asked, puzzled about why she had suddenly stopped. You don't really want to see the stars, do you? Olivia blinked, her smile deepening slightly. William looked at her in surprise, not expecting her to be so direct. If you were just looking for an excuse to slip away, you've succeeded. There's no need to actually go see the stars now, Olivia said gently, gazing at William. William couldn't help but laugh. I wasn't planning to go, but now I suddenly want to. Would Miss Wilson care to join me? Olivia smiled too, no longer with her previous reserved gentleness, but with genuine happiness that made her eyes crinkle. I'd love to. William led her through the bustling streets, turning through an alleyway that opened onto the seaside. Not far ahead lay a vast stretch of beach. Olivia was amazed this was where he said they could see stars. It was the first time she felt that stargazing could be such a beautiful thing. She raised her head to look at the sky. William was also gazing at her. In the night, stars adorned the deep blue dome, dazzling and enchanting. Watching Olivia lost in the stars and waves, William's lips curved into a slight smile. Beautiful, isn't it? Yes, very beautiful, she replied. Would you like to look a while longer? No, I've seen enough, she gently declined. Because she feared that if she continued gazing like this, she might fall for this playboy whom others had warned her about. His lips curled into a smile. You know, I've never interacted with a girl like you before, so if I do anything wrong, I hope you can forgive me. His tone was serious and solemn, his eyes flashing with an unusual glint. After speaking, he turned and walked away, his silhouette tinged with a hint of loneliness and resignation. She watched his retreating figure, suddenly feeling she shouldn't have behaved that way. How could she judge someone based on others' words? She bit her lip, hesitating for a moment before following him. William stopped in his tracks, turning to look at her. She ran up to him, standing before him and looking up. "I'm sorry, I was doing it on purpose earlier," she confessed, her face flushed. "I understand," he smiled, reaching out to gently ruffle her soft hair. "Would you like to walk with me for a bit?" I would love to," she immediately replied. "Then let's go." He glanced at Olivia, then extended his hand to grasp her delicate wrist. "Your heels are quite high. Let me support you." She stared at her hand in his grasp. By now they had walked onto the beach, where looking up revealed the vast starry sky and turning around showed the rolling waves. She felt the warmth from William's palm transfer to her, and for a moment she thought, this is nice. They strolled along the shoreline at a leisurely pace. "The stars are especially beautiful tonight. Thank you for bringing me here to see them." As William walked with Olivia along the beach, they unexpectedly caught sight of Ethan and Sophie in the distance. They were kissing. Under the starry sky, with the sea breeze gently blowing, lovers embraced in a deep kiss, such a beautiful scene. But watching Sophie being held tightly in Ethan's arms, William instinctively averted his gaze, a wave of sourness rising in his heart. That suffocating feeling returned. However, turning away now would seem too cowardly. William took Olivia's hand and approached them, brother, sister-in-law. Hearing his voice, Ethan looked up at them, smiling. Olivia, what are you doing here?" William also smiled at Sophie. "I met Olivia at the party and we chatted a bit. You know her?" Ethan nodded. "How could I not know Uncle Zhang's daughter? She's visited our home before, don't you remember?" William shook his head. In the past, he had been completely focused on that scheming Grace, paying little attention to others. Sophie also nodded at them in greeting, then nestled against Ethan's shoulder, their intimacy apparent, as if they were naturally meant to be together. William's gaze lingered on Sophie's face, feeling a stab of pain that made him close his eyes briefly, as if wounded. After a moment, he turned to explain to Olivia. "Olivia, my brother and sister-in-law have a very close relationship, so they're always affectionate." Olivia nodded lightly, showing no particular reaction. However, looking at Ethan and Sophie's embrace, then at William's eyes that had been avoiding them since they met, Olivia felt an indescribable emotion stir within her. Olivia looked at William and said, "Shall we head back to the hotel?" William seemed lost in thought, shaking his head and answering irrelevantly. "Let's go." They walked along the road away from the beach, neither mentioning what had just happened. Olivia glanced sideways, noticing William with lowered eyes and a somber expression. Olivia stepped forward and grabbed William's hand, finally asking what she couldn't hold back. "William, do you have feelings for Sophie?" William raised his head, forcing a smile for Olivia, but the sadness in his eyes remained undisguised. "Yes, it's okay, you'll find your own happiness someday." Olivia patted William's back gently, looking at him earnestly. The two fell into a comfortable silence for a long while. Back home, Olivia still couldn't shake off the evening's surprises. Sitting on the sofa, her thoughts jumbled, she reviewed the night's events. Olivia suddenly realized that William was more deep and devoted than she had imagined. She had previously thought that among young masters and ladies of their standing, deep feelings didn't exist. Being open and never giving your heart was the way to go, since marriages were never self-determined anyway, and ultimately, all that mattered were business connections. But William's feelings for Sophie seemed different. He appeared to truly love his sister-in-law. William and Sophie finally graduated. Ethan brought flowers to greet Sophie, accompanied her for graduation photos, and as Sophie happily nestled against Ethan, William's heart ached rhythmically. He was in love with his sister-in-law, and originally they could have been together. But now he had to watch her graduate, soon to become someone else's bride, and that person was his most beloved brother. "Why aren't you taking photos?" Sophie turned to ask William. William forced a smile and said, "Not interested." Sophie didn't pursue the matter further. "Let's go." Sophie took Ethan's arm and headed toward the parking lot. William stood at the roadside, watching Sophie's retreating figure until she disappeared from sight. He pulled out a cigarette from his pocket, lit it, and began to smoke. The smoke rose in tendrils, blurring his vision. "William?" a soft voice called, drawing William back to reality. He looked down at the woman beside him, barely glancing at her before looking away. Before getting into the car, he took a few more drags of his cigarette, then discarded it in a trash bin. On the way home, Sophie suddenly craved a spicy hot pot, so Ethan instructed the driver to change course. "Arnold, find a spicy hot pot place," Ethan requested. "Yes, sir," Arnold agreed. This street was called Red River Road, one of the more prosperous pedestrian streets in the area. Both sides were lined with large stores, and the street was crowded and lively. "Young master, Miss Sophie, we've arrived," the driver announced. Ethan had already opened the door, extending his hand to help Sophie down. Because they were taking graduation photos, Sophie had worn a beige dress today, revealing her snow-white, slender ankles. With her long hair flowing over her shoulders and her delicate face, she looked like a porcelain doll. Ethan slightly bent at the waist, intimately encircling her waist as he led her toward the hot pot restaurant. William stood at the roadside, looking up, his gaze fixed blankly on Ethan and Sophie as they walked away together. He gave a bitter smile. Why did they keep running into each other? An image from long ago flashed through his mind once. He and Sophie had also visited this restaurant together. Back then, Grace hadn't appeared yet, and he and Sophie were still good friends. Back then, he hadn't hurt Sophie yet. But now, he forcefully snuffed out the half-smoked cigarette in his hand, took a deep breath, then turned to hail a taxi, speeding off in the opposite direction. Inside the hot pot restaurant, the servers enthusiastically attended to customers. Sophie sat across the table, watching the boiling broth. She picked up her chopsticks, dipped a fish ball into the sauce, and brought it to her mouth. The delicious spicy flavor made her close her eyes in satisfaction, her brows arched with pleasure. Ethan quietly watched her. "Is it good?" he asked softly, seeing Sophie eating like a small cat. Yes," Sophie nodded vigorously to express her enjoyment. Ethan looked at her expression, his lips curving into an indulgent smile. Suddenly, a breeze blew in, lifting Sophie's hair and exposing her fair, elegant neck. Ethan's gaze fixed on her skin, unable to look away for a long time. Sophie sensed something unusual and looked up, puzzled. Ethan quickly regained his composure, smiling warmly. "Eat quickly, or it won't taste as good when it cools." Sophie obediently responded and continued eating. After dinner, the couple strolled hand in hand nearby before Ethan took Sophie home. "Good night, Sophie." Ethan helped Sophie close her door, bending to kiss her forehead. "Good night, Ethan," Sophie smiled sweetly, turning to enter, but Ethan suddenly embraced her from behind. "What is it?" Sophie asked, confused. Ethan loosened his hold slightly, then gently caressed her cheek, saying softly, "Nothing. I just can't bear to let you go. I wish I could see you earlier every day." Hearing these words, Sophie's nose stung with emotion. She turned and threw herself into Ethan's arms, wrapping her arms around his neck and tilting her head to kiss his lips. The kiss came unexpectedly. Ethan was stunned for a second before responding, turning from passive to active. In the night sky, the moon was bright and the stars sparse. The cool moonlight streamed through the window onto the two figures embracing on the bed. They forgot to breathe, forgot everything, feeling only each other's presence. It was as if nothing in this world could separate them. They would be together forever. "What do you want me to say? That I'm in love with your woman? With my sister-in-law?" William shouted as Ethan grabbed his collar and pushed him against the wall. He shouldn't have been drinking. Earlier, seeing Ethan and Sophie together had been too painful, and he couldn't resist seeking solace in alcohol. Alcohol indeed makes mistakes worse. He had drunkenly called out Sophie's name, and his brother had heard he, as a younger brother, was truly embarrassed. And now, even sober, he couldn't change anything. "You should indeed say these things," Ethan coldly replied. William was stunned for 2 seconds, suddenly realizing. So you already knew, no wonder his brother had looked at him that way. He had always wondered why he'd never noticed his brother's jealousy was so intense. William Parker, remember this well? Ethan warned with an icy tone. William inexplicably felt a chill down his spine, sensing something ominous. Ethan narrowed his dark eyes, dangerously staring at William. "You'd better forget her completely if I catch you having any thoughts about her again. Don't blame me for being ruthless." "But brother, how can you just forget someone you love?" William laughed bitterly, his voice full of indescribable sourness and bitterness. "That's your own doing," Ethan snorted coldly, mercilessly exposing the truth. William stared at him, his heart aching terribly. Yes, it was his own doing. He had hurt Sophie himself. But back then, how could he have known he would eventually love Sophie so deeply? William's hand hanging at his side secretly clenched into a fist, his nails digging into his palm. The pain reminded him he needed to pull himself together. Sophie didn't need him anymore, and he couldn't be there for her like before, so he could only distance himself to avoid causing her trouble. With this realization, William straightened up and looked directly at Ethan, firmly stating, "Don't worry, I will forget Sophie, and I will never disrupt her life again." Ethan seemed surprised, then smiled. "I hope so." With that, he released William and turned toward his study. William stood rooted in place, watching the direction his brother had disappeared, speechless for a long time. Early the next morning, William woke up with a start from a deep sleep. Sunlight streamed brilliantly through the window, dazzling and blinding his eyes. He rubbed his eyes, and once adjusted to the light, he pulled back the covers and sat up. Recalling his behavior the previous night, William's face hardened with regret, nearly driving him to hit the wall. He shouldn't have overindulged. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done such a thing. Although it wasn't intentional, he still didn't dare face Ethan's expression. Getting drunk and calling his sister-in-law's name, while hugging his own brother half the night, he feared the embarrassment would make him want to find a hole to crawl into. William hastily threw on some clothes and fled downstairs like he was escaping. When he reached the ground floor, he suddenly remembered his car keys were still in the garage at home, and he hadn't brought them. He couldn't worry about that now. He hurriedly changed his shoes and rushed out, hailing a taxi to head to the company. It was the weekend, and he was going to the office to catch up on work. The road was jammed for about 10 minutes before he finally reached the company. William pushed open the door to the executive elevator, strode in, swiped his card, and pressed the button. The elevator slowly started moving. It reached the 28th floor. Just as William stepped out of the elevator, he encountered a familiar figure approaching. The woman wore a white dress, her black hair pinned up, revealing her delicate and beautiful neck. Her exquisite collarbones peeked through, and her pretty face was lightly made up. She walked toward William in high heels, her footsteps light and pleasant to the ear. Only when she stood before William did he snap back to reality. "Olivia, what are you doing here?" "I came to find you." Olivia smiled sweetly at William, her voice gentle and melodious. William was instantly stunned. "Find me? What for?" Olivia shook her head. "No particular reason." William was even more puzzled. No reason to find him? Was she joking? "Then, why did you have time to come find me today?" "I just returned from an international art exhibition and thought I'd drop by to see you," Olivia said, handing him the gift bag she was holding. "This is a gift my mother specifically asked me to pick out for your grandmother." "Thank you. I'll thank your mother on behalf of Grandma." William accepted the bag, the corners of his mouth lifting in a slight curve. Olivia bit her lip in a smile, her cheeks flushing slightly, clearly a bit embarrassed. She stole glances at William's handsome, well-defined features, her cheeks growing increasingly red. "William, I have something I want to tell you," she said. William nodded. "Go ahead." "I like you." Olivia gathered her courage and boldly expressed her feelings. William froze. What? Had he heard correctly? "William, I like you. Will you accept me?" Olivia repeated, her rosy lips parting slightly, her breath like an orchid. "Olivia," William was extremely shocked. "We're not compatible." His rejection was too direct, causing Olivia's heart to tighten. William frowned. "Olivia, you know that I know you have someone you like, but you can't be together anymore, so why don't we give it a try? Can we?" Olivia looked at him hopefully, seemingly waiting for his affirmation. We can't be together anymore. He had decided to forget Sophie, so how could he date Olivia? Olivia, with its live sound, reminded him of someone every time he said it. "Then let's try. Whatever the outcome, I'll accept it." "Olivia, you're truly foolish," William sighed. Olivia persisted. "So, will you accept me?" William hesitated for a long time before finally nodding slightly. Seeing this, Olivia was overjoyed, almost jumping into his arms, but he gently pushed her away. "I need to work now. See you this afternoon," William said, quickly disappearing into the elevator. As the elevator doors closed, William saw Olivia still gazing at him longingly, her eyes filled with confusion. At that moment, the elevator stopped at the 6th floor, with a soft ding. William collected himself and walked out. He first returned to his office to organize files and check information. But William was distracted, thinking about Olivia one moment and Sophie the next, unable to focus. Even when his assistant knocked and entered with tea, he barely noticed. Today was Sophie and Ethan's wedding day. Sophie stood as the bride with Ethan on opposite sides of the red carpet, her face radiant with smiles. Beside Sophie came Ethan's gentle voice as he stepped in front of her, bending slightly. "Are you ready?" Sophie nodded. "Yes." "Good." Ethan looked at her, his eyes showing a trace of tenderness. He reached out to gently brush away a strand of hair from her cheek, his voice full of adoration. "Remember to hold my arm tightly." Sophie looked up at him, her lips curved in a happy smile. "I will." Sophie wore a snow-white strapless wedding dress today, her hair elegantly pinned up, revealing her slender neck and beautiful collarbones. A diamond necklace adorned her delicate collarbones, dazzling and eye-catching. The skirt was embellished with pearls and pink crystals that shimmered with her movements, casting countless light rays and making the entire dress appear magnificently elegant. Now, Sophie held Ethan's arm, standing beside him. She tilted her face up, gazing at his handsome profile, feeling her heart brimming with sweetness. Sophie thought she must have owed him in a past life. Otherwise, how could heaven have blessed her with such a perfect love? William stood at the other end of the steps, watching the two figures standing together on the platform. His face was gloomy and unpleasant, his fists unconsciously clenching. Applause erupted around him as the host took the stage to narrate Ethan and Sophie's story, starting from their first meeting and continuing through their journey of falling in love. Finally, the host offered some reflections. Sophie and Ethan exchanged rings amid the blessing gazes of all, completing the ceremony. After the wedding ceremony, guests began to disperse. Ethan helped Sophie back to her seat. "Sophie," Ethan had just begun to speak when a sharp female voice interrupted him. "Sophia Smith." Everyone looked toward the source of the sound, seeing a girl in 10-centimeter high heels walking toward Sophie. The girl had striking features, heavy makeup, and a curvaceous figure showcased in a black short dress that displayed her stunning physique. She strode directly to Sophie, appearing domineering, and was about to slap her face. At that moment, Ethan caught the girl's wrist and coldly asked, "Grace, when did you get out of prison?" The girl struggled but couldn't break free from Ethan's grip, her anger boiling over. She cursed at Ethan. "Bastard, let me go." "Sophie," Ethan turned to address her, "go home and rest first." Sophie looked worriedly at Ethan. "Will you be okay by yourself?" "Yes," Ethan nodded. "Don't worry." Only then did Sophie slowly move away. After she left, Ethan threw the girl to the ground, looking down at her with an icy expression. "Grace Miller, haven't you learned your lesson from before?" William walked over, pulling Grace toward the exit. Grace resisted, struggling and screaming. "William Parker, let me go. I have nothing to do with you anymore. What right do you have to drag me? But let me tell you, Sophie Smith will never find happiness." Grace jerked herself free, and William released her hand. Grace immediately fell to the ground, clutching her painful waist and glaring hatefully at William. William frowned, crouching beside Grace to help her up. "Are you all right?" Grace looked at William with gritted teeth. "William Parker, we still have unsettled accounts between us," William responded coldly. "There's been nothing between us for a long time." Grace became even more enraged at his words. She raised her hand to slap William, but in midair, her hand was intercepted by a broad palm. Then she was pushed away, falling to the ground. "Who?" Grace turned back in shock, seeing an unfamiliar woman holding her wrist tightly, despite being frightened. William looked back, his eyes widening in surprise. It was Olivia. Olivia ignored Grace, going straight to help William up. "Are you okay?" I'm fine." William was momentarily stunned, shaking his head, his expression seeming somewhat lost. "As long as you're all right," Olivia reassured him softly. Then she turned to face Grace. "You're Grace Miller?" Grace didn't immediately react, staring blankly at her. Olivia smiled slightly. "Miss Miller, I'm William Parker's girlfriend, Olivia Wilson." "What?" Grace was stunned, her eyes widening. You say you're William's girlfriend?" Olivia nodded. "That's right, so it would be better if you stayed away from him in the future." Grace still hadn't recovered from her shock, asking, "How long have you been together?" "Quite a while. Since his graduation," Olivia said calmly, looking at Grace. "Miss Miller, to my knowledge, no one here has wronged you. All consequences are a result of your own actions," Olivia continued. "Since you dared to do those things, you should bear the responsibility. I advise you to behave yourself." With that, Olivia took William's hand and left, leaving Grace standing dumbfounded. The wedding finally ended, guests dispersed, and Mr. and Mrs. Parker were seeing guests off. Ethan remained by Sophie's side, helping her remove her makeup and pack up. William sat silently on the sofa. Ethan wiped Sophie's makeup with a tissue, suddenly pausing with a sigh. "Sophie, I'm sorry, it's okay," Sophie shook her head dismissively. "Don't overthink it." But, Ethan frowned, "You still look unwell." "I'm just a bit tired," Sophie forced a smile. "Let's get ready for the evening banquet now that the wedding's over." Ethan pondered for a moment, then nodded. After they finished washing up, they drove to the hotel. William sat beside them, lost in thought, not saying a word. Ethan glanced at him. "Will, are you all right?" William looked up at him, his eyes red. "I never expected things to turn out this way, ruining your and sister-in-law's wedding. I'm sorry, brother." "You have nothing to apologize for to me or Sophie, but I think you might need to explain things to Olivia," Ethan advised, looking at him. "Olivia?" When William first agreed to Olivia's proposal, he genuinely just wanted to give it a try. He had originally thought Olivia would eventually give up. But unexpectedly, they somehow ended up together. William could hardly believe it, but the facts were undeniable. So when Olivia came to find him, William was quite happy. That day, the sunshine was pleasant and the breeze gentle. William had just left the company, planning to browse the nearby commercial district. Passing a flower shop, he suddenly heard a familiar female voice. "Do you like it?" William stopped in his tracks, looking toward the sound. Olivia stood at the shop entrance, holding a bouquet of red roses, her face bearing a radiant smile. William was stunned briefly, then showed a surprised expression. "You," he pointed at the roses in Olivia's arms. "What did you buy flowers for?" "For you, of course." Hearing this, William felt countless emotions surge within him. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his excited heart, and asked softly, "Why have you suddenly become like this? Like what? You weren't like this before." William spoke quietly, seemingly feeling his tone was too harsh. He softened his voice. "I remember you used to be quite aloof, greeting me with polite distance." Why now, hearing his words, Olivia couldn't help but laugh. "Haha, you mean before?" William frowned. Olivia raised an eyebrow, smiling mischievously. "That personality was because I didn't like you enough. What did you say?" Olivia leaned close to his ear, lowering her voice. "Didn't you know? I've actually liked you all along." Boom, these words struck like a thunderbolt, leaving William staring at her in shock. "What did you say?" He gazed at her dazedly, as if needing confirmation. "Say it again." "I said," Olivia looked up at him, her gaze intense, enunciating each word. "Actually, I've liked you all along." William's mind instantly flashed with countless images. Some things that had become blurry seemed to clear up again. He recalled first meeting Olivia, how she smiled and chatted at the banquet, but maintained a polite distance from everyone. He took her to see stars and ran into his brother and Sophie, and she immediately discerned his feelings for Sophie. Olivia had always been clever and perceptive. Perhaps she had sensed it all along but never exposed him. Later, she quietly stood by his side. Occasionally, he would turn to find her smiling gently at him. He had thought it was because they were friends. Later, she asked if he wanted to try being with her. At that time, William thought she was just teasing him. Until last night they had been playing games. The next day would be his brother and Sophie's wedding. William's feelings were complex. He wasn't particularly sad. In fact, he was genuinely happy for them. But the sour feeling in his heart was real, making him restless and fidgety. Olivia noticed William's unease and agitation, gently pulling him to rest against her, soothingly stroking his emotions. William lowered his eyes, sighing deeply. He wrapped his arms around Olivia, his voice hoarse. Thank you. Olivia looked up at him, her eyes bright and expectant. So, before she could finish, William interrupted her. Let's get married. Olivia was taken aback, not understanding immediately, staring at him blankly. What do you mean? William lowered his gaze, quietly looking at her. What you just said, was it sincere? Olivia blinked in confusion. Which words? I don't understand. William pressed his lips together, steadily gazing at her. He spoke slowly. You just said you wanted to marry me. Was that true? Olivia's face instantly flushed. Though they had been dating for over half a year, she had never discussed such intimate topics with William. Earlier, to comfort him, she had carelessly said, "If worst comes to worst, I'll marry you as your wife," without thinking. But now, he had so directly repeated it. Olivia was extremely embarrassed and quickly changed the subject. Well, it's getting late. Let's go eat first, and we can discuss this after we're full, okay? All right. Looking up at him, Olivia's heart suddenly trembled. Are you marrying me because Sophie is getting married tomorrow, or because you love me? William hadn't expected her to ask this, and was momentarily stunned. Olivia softly asked William, You used to like Sophie. Do you still like her now? William saw the momentary panic and despondency in her eyes. His heart ached sharply. He wanted to tell her that he actually didn't know anymore, but he feared that saying so would hurt her vulnerable heart. Seeing him silently lowering his head, Olivia assumed she had guessed correctly, and without further questions, she turned to walk toward the stairs. William quickly followed, grasping her cold, slender arm and gently called out, Olivia, what if I say I really don't know right now, would you leave me? Olivia turned back, her eyes glistening with tears. Are you afraid I'll leave? William nodded. I'm very worried. Olivia shook her head with a smile. Don't worry, even if you don't want me anymore, I won't leave. Why? William frowned in puzzlement. Olivia stared at the ceiling light for a long time before finally speaking softly. Because I've already fallen in love with you. Upon hearing this, William's expression changed slightly. After a moment of surprise, his lips curved into a smile. I see. He suddenly leaned close to Olivia's ear and whispered, Olivia, let's get engaged first, shall we? After we're married, if you still love me, please stay by my side forever. Olivia turned to him, her gaze meeting the tender, deep affection in William's eyes, and she felt momentarily breathless. She had imagined countless times being with William until they grew old together, but never thought it would truly become reality. She was so moved she forgot how to respond to William, her mind completely filled with emotion. Seeing her speechless for so long, William pulled her into his arms and kissed her lips. Olivia closed her eyes, surrendering to him completely. They embraced tightly, intimately entwined. Thinking of Olivia, William felt a flicker of panic. Just now at the wedding, though Grace hadn't shown any outward signs and had handled the situation well, but after leading William away, she had said nothing, just mentioned feeling tired and wanting to go home to sleep, then left directly. Now that Ethan brought it up, William immediately sensed something was wrong. Though Olivia had always been gentle and considerate, she rarely left without a word like this. This indicated that Olivia was indeed upset. William quickly went to find Olivia. Since he had met Olivia when Grace's incident was already over, William had never told her about Grace. He didn't know what Olivia might think, but whatever her thoughts, he couldn't let her misunderstand. William began to worry. He wasn't sure when Olivia had become so important, but it seemed he could no longer bear to lose her. This time, the experiences Sophie had gone through couldn't happen to Olivia. With this thought, William quickly left, driving straight to his and Olivia's home. William returned home to find Olivia sitting on the sofa, quietly crying. William panicked, gathering her into his arms and speaking softly. I'm sorry, it's my fault. Olivia raised her tear-streaked face to look at William, her complexion pale, eyes swollen, tears streaming down her cheeks. William's heart ached intensely. He lowered his head to kiss away the tears at the corners of her eyes, his voice gentle. Don't cry, Olivia. I was wrong. I should have told you about Grace. It's just that I don't love her, and she hasn't mattered for a long time. Olivia suddenly reached up to wrap her arms around William's neck, then stood on tiptoe to kiss him. William was startled for half a second before responding, deepening the kiss. After a long while, they separated. Olivia's eyes were red, her voice tinged with sadness and self-mockery. You must have been very upset today, seeing Grace ruin Sophie's wedding. William considered for a moment before replying. Whatever she does, it has nothing to do with me anymore." Olivia cried while smiling bitterly. "But you still can't let go of Sophie, can you? You once said you'd try to let her go and live your own life. What about now?" "I still feel the same way." William's eyes reddened, his nose feeling sour. "So, do you still want to marry me?" Olivia wiped the tears from her face, nodding firmly, "Of course." William pulled Olivia into a tight embrace. "Silly girl, don't cry anymore." William went to shower, while Olivia stood on the balcony, letting the cold wind brush her face. She knew William still loved Sophie, and no matter how much he forced himself to forget, it would never be completely possible. William had never said it aloud, but Olivia could sense his pain. What a proud person he was, yet he would bend for another woman. Olivia knew this must have been a tremendous blow to William, but it didn't matter. No matter what, she would be there for William from now on. Click, the balcony door opened. It was William. Seeing Olivia standing alone on the balcony, her silhouette tinged with solitude, William felt a pang in his heart and stepped forward to embrace her. Olivia closed her eyes. Though she couldn't see William's face, her other senses seemed heightened. She could smell William's pleasant cologne, a faint scent of sandalwood mixed with citrus freshness. She could hear William's heartbeat, steady and rhythmic through his thin shirt. She could feel the gentle touch and warmth of William's hands as they stroked her hair, tender and concerned. Olivia opened her eyes to look at William, her eyes misted with a watery haze, red at the corners, reflecting both vulnerability and charm. "Will," Olivia whispered, a hint of nervousness in her gentle, delicate voice. William looked down at her. "I want to kiss you." After saying this nervously, Olivia swallowed, staring at William without daring to move. William closed his eyes for a moment, took a deep breath to calm himself, his voice hoarse and deep. "Olivia, don't regret this later." He suddenly lifted Olivia onto his lap, one hand supporting her waist, the other cradling the back of her head. He leaned in close to her face, his hot breath mingling with hers. Olivia closed her eyes and leaned forward to kiss him. Their lips met, and William's arms tightened around her. The increasingly deep kisses and his hands holding her ever tighter made Olivia lose all ability to think, her mind completely blank except for the awareness of the man before her. William led Olivia downstairs. The living room was already full of people. Mr. and Mrs. Parker sat angrily on one side, with Mr. and Mrs. Smith on the other. Mr. Smith was glaring fiercely at William, who sat across from him. Grace had tears in her eyes, looking at William with a mixture of disbelief and grievance. William sat irritably beside Grace, frowning and deep in thought. Seeing them come down, everyone looked over. Noting they were holding hands, Mr. Parker frowned slightly but said nothing. As for William, he stared intently at them as they descended, his eyes filled with coldness. "You've arrived. Please sit." Mr. Parker broke the awkward atmosphere, though his voice still contained anger. Ethan looked at his pale-faced fiancé and then at William, his eyes showing icy displeasure. "Mrs. Parker's voice was still relatively gentle as she asked, "We've already questioned William. He says he might have been drunk. Sophie, what's your explanation?" Sophie still felt the effects of the drug, with a headache and no strength. Having just been tormented by Ethan in the room, her entire being exuded an air of languor and exhaustion. She glanced at William and Grace, leaning against Ethan's embrace, and gave a faint smile. "I haven't heard what William and Grace have said, so let them repeat it." William was stunned by her words, opened his mouth as if to say something, but then closed it again without speaking. Grace began to sob quietly. I know Will must have mistaken Sophie for me when he was drunk." Sophia laughed coldly to herself. So she was still pretending? William frowned, feeling irritated. "How many more times must I say it? I was drunk, Grace supported me into an empty room, and then I knew nothing more. Do I need to spell out the rest?" Grace's tears fell instantly. "I took you to another room, not this one. Gracie, I really don't know why I ended up in the same room as Sophia. Do you believe me or not?" William implored. Grace turned away, refusing to look at him, her shoulders shaking with sobs. Even Mrs. Parker couldn't bear to see her cry like this and comforted her softly before turning to Sophie. "Sophie, they've both spoken. Now it's your turn to explain." Sophie nodded. "Originally I was with Ethan toasting guests, then Grace came over with 2 glasses of wine to make peace with me. Then she said her hand hurt and had Ethan go fetch William for medicine. Later, I felt dizzy and wanted to rest, which you saw, Aunt Victoria. Mrs. Parker nodded. Indeed, she had been the one to suggest Sophie rest. Sophie continued. Then Grace accompanied me to the room to lie down, and I fell asleep. Later, I felt very hot, so I took a shower. When I came out, I saw the lights in my room had been turned off. Everyone knows I have mild night blindness, so there was no light at all in the room. I was feeling my way to the light switch when you all arrived. Mrs. Parker was about to speak when Sophie added another sentence. My theory is that someone drugged me. Everyone gasped in shock. How could this be possible? Who would dare drug the future bride at an engagement party? Sophie looked coolly at Grace, smiling slightly. Wouldn't you agree, Grace? Grace was startled. Are you suggesting I drugged you? Now even Mrs. Parker couldn't sit still, her voice stern as she addressed Sophie. Sophie, this is a serious accusation. Aunt Victoria, whether I'm making it up or not, we'll see shortly, Sophie said. Then she looked at William, laughing coldly. William Parker, I once told you she doesn't love you, but you didn't believe me. Later I discovered I loved Ethan, so I stopped caring about your affairs. But now I'm sorry, even if you defend Grace, I will punish her severely, because she has now interfered with me and Ethan. Ethan, sensing her trembling, gently patted her shoulder to calm her anger. William placed the test report on the table and turned to face his father. Dad, you handle this. We're going upstairs first. All right, go ahead. Take good care of Sophie. Mr. and Mrs. Smith also hugged their daughter affectionately, telling Sophie to rest well. With the truth revealed, things became much simpler. Investigating Grace was not a difficult task for the Parker family. Within 2 days, all of Grace's information was delivered to Mr. and Mrs. Parker. Only then did they discover that after Grace went abroad, she had barely attended classes, spending her days with so-called high society young masters. She only planned to return after spending all her money, even maintaining ambiguous relationships with several local ruffians. Mr. Parker was so angry his face turned red as he looked at the information. Mrs. Parker was even more heartbroken. They had spent so much money sponsoring Grace because they had seen her diligence, ambition, and resilience. But now, such wonderful resources and opportunities had been carelessly squandered by Grace. She had even dared to conspire with those people to drug Sophie and William. According to their investigation, the drug was a newly developed hallucinogenic substance from abroad. After consumption, it could cause temporary excitement and hallucinations, but had significant side effects, including addiction potential and damage to the kidneys and liver. Such a thing she had dared to use on their son and Sophie. What should we do? Send her away again? Mr. Parker asked with a deep sigh. What's the use of sending her away? Her legs work fine. Won't she come back? Mrs. Parker's tone was equally grim. They had truly witnessed what it meant to nurture a viper, to help an ungrateful person. Then, let's report it to the police. I'll speak with my friends. Let's do that for now. A few days later, Grace was arrested for using prohibited substances to poison others. The news was somehow posted on the school website after a few days, and the post exploded with comments. Discussions erupted among the students. That day, William was eating in the cafeteria when he heard discussions behind him. The speakers probably didn't realize that the person sitting in the corner wearing a hat was William, so they didn't lower their voices. Damn, what does this mean? Grace drugged William? Seems like it. They say the Parker family personally had her sent to prison. I wonder if there's some inside story. What inside story? Tell me, brother. Just guessing, but could it be that the Parker family used some means to make William marry Sophie? Whoa, I feel like you might have uncovered the truth. William couldn't eat anymore. He picked up his tray and walked to their table, coldly saying, "Stop speculating. Grace brought this on herself. Our family didn't use any tactics." He continued walking with his tray, took a few steps, remembered something, and called back loudly to them. Also, I was mistaken before. Sophie doesn't like me. She only sees me as a friend. The person she loves is my brother, who will be my sister-in-law in the future. I don't want to hear anyone speaking ill of my sister-in-law behind her back. The surrounding people couldn't help but gasp. The entire cafeteria fell silent, except for the sound of the cafeteria ladies serving food. When William finally left the cafeteria, there was a collective exhale, followed by an even more intense buzz of conversation. Folks, we just witnessed drama unfold and two big bombshells at once. Does this mean the rumors in that post were all true? Who posted it anyway? Could it have been Sophie? No way, didn't William just say Sophie likes his brother? She wouldn't care about Grace's business then, right? Anyway, Grace was a campus beauty in her own right. How could she end up like this? Yeah, what could have driven her to such extremes? I heard all her school fees were sponsored by the Parker family. Really? Isn't that like the farmer and the snake? Grace is too ruthless. As William walked out of the cafeteria, the bright weather suddenly darkened, with distant thunder rumbling. William walked at a steady pace, and within a few steps, heavy rain began to fall, large drops hitting him. The rain quickly soaked his hair and clothes. Those around who hadn't brought umbrellas hurried to the cafeteria and shops for shelter. But William didn't take cover. He just walked slowly in the rain, feeling the droplets strike his body. The next morning, after a sleepless night of anguish, William encountered his brother and Sophie in the corridor. Seeing them emerge from the same room, William felt deeply uncomfortable, but he couldn't find a reason to vent. Seeing his condition, Ethan frowned and asked Sophie to go downstairs and wait for him. Sophie obediently went down. Only after her figure completely disappeared down the stairwell did Ethan ask him in a solemn voice, "Does it hurt? The feeling of being betrayed by someone you love, isn't it painful, like you can't breathe?" William lowered his head without speaking, knowing his brother was concerned for him. He had expected his brother to comfort him, but unexpectedly, Ethan sighed and said in a very sympathetic tone, "Remember this feeling well." William looked up at his brother in confusion. Why? Ethan's expression was extremely complex, his eyes filled with emotions too dense to dissolve. Because someone else was hurt like this by you for 5 years. William was startled, his heart skipping a beat. Was he referring to Sophie? Even if Sophie misunderstood and liked you all those years because she mistook me for you, her goodness to you was genuine, and the fact that you hurt her is undeniable. Ethan continued. Ethan looked at him and added, "So now that you've felt this pain, remember it well, reflect deeply. The pain you felt these few days, Sophie endured for 5 years. But even so, she was never unkind to you, never blamed you or Grace. Now think about it yesterday evening, when you still knew nothing, you were hostile toward Sophie. Don't you feel conscience-stricken?" With this reminder, William saw countless memories flooding his mind. All the ways Sophie had been good to him over the years, her care and tolerance, and all his malice, misunderstandings, and harm toward her, bit by bit engulfing him. He suddenly felt that his previous heartache seemed insignificant. The regret and tightness in his chest at this moment completely overwhelmed his previous discomfort. Seeing the kaleidoscope of expressions on his face, Ethan gave a bitter smile. "Do you know how much I wished you could give back those 5 years that were stolen by misunderstanding?" William stood dumbfounded. So his brother had also liked Sophie. Hadn't his brother disliked women? "If I were you, even if she had made a mistake, I would have made her fall in love with me, but I thank you for not cherishing her." With that, Ethan went downstairs to find Sophie, leaving William standing there. Only William remained, frozen in place, his heart aching as if thousands of ants were gnawing at it, the pain spreading throughout his body via his bloodstream. He couldn't help wanting to cry, but brother, why does the pain now hurt so much more than knowing Grace had been deceiving me? It was as if he had only just realized what he had lost.